How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Supergirl, Wonderwomen and Poison Ivy? Part 1. Huge shout out to Scarlet Easer 058 for this story. If you want to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Madara. You intend to cast the infinite Tsukiyomi in front of us, such a pointless decision. Even if you could succeed at it before Naruto and I attacked you, what's to stop a fellow Rinnegan user such as myself from simply undoing the jutsu? You're the one who said that you have both our powers. Put another way, the two of us have the same abilities as you. So go ahead and waste your chakra trying, we will stop you over and over again. Sasuke uchiha to Madara uchiha. Darkness. It was present as an almost tangible feeling here, thick and completely suffusing the evening air, to the point of sending every single one of Naruto's empathic senses haywire. Something was coming, something well and truly evil, and for the first time since he had killed Kaguya in one-on-one combat, Naruto felt truly afraid. Yet even now, despite what his instincts were telling him, Naruto knew that he could not run away. Not from this, not from humanity in its time of need. It was a different reality, with a different humanity than the one he had all but given his life to protect, yet some things would always remain the same. Naruto Uzumaki had always been someone who would lend a hand to anyone who looked like they simply needed a little help. He wasn't one to go out of his way to save people just because he had powers, he was too new to this world to ever contemplate that. However, he was still willing to help anyone he came across that needed it and would not ignore any injustices that caught his attention. He bore no illusions about being some grand defender of the innocent, champion of justice or guardian of truth. No, he was a very down-to-earth person and simply aided others out of the kindness of his heart because they genuinely needed it, nothing more. There was no need for a grand design or some great drive to motivate him to help people, he just did so cause he was a kind person. And, right now Naruto felt in his very bones that the earth really needed his help. Naruto had barely been on this culturally diverse world 3 weeks and spent most of that time discovering everything he needed to learn to blend in. Thankfully, he had assistance in the form of a few thousand clones scattered across the globe and a witch capable of peering into the future to give him some much needed direction. Between his favorite ninjutsu technique and Madame Xanadu's help, he sufficiently closed the gaping hole in his knowledge base to a point that he could pass himself off as a local. His research mostly focusing on general things about the world, with the only exception being the world's self-ordained protectors. Naruto was keenly interested in them and their abilities. Vigilantes in colorful costumes were popping up everywhere in America, and cause of that the rest of the world was paying close attention to the US. Batman, Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern and Aquaman were all heavily featured in US newspaper articles as the most famous of these vigilantes. It was mostly due to the authorities wanting to either rein them and their activities in or bring them to justice for some various reason. However, as far as Naruto could tell, these vigilantes were doing a better job at ridding their cities of crime than the authorities themselves. He recognized these selfless individuals for what they were, heroes trying to do whatever they could to help their cities regardless of anyone's opinions. However, even Naruto had to admit that they were a flashy bunch in their eye-catching costumes. In the end, while he wouldn't be caught dead wearing tights or spandex, Naruto respected them for what they were doing to protect the innocent. It was very noble, and their approach to it was fascinating. If he ever stopped in one city long enough to become attached to it, he would try it out. For now, though, he had other things to worry about. Mainly the calamity that was soon to befall the earth. From his perspective, almost no time had passed since the end of the war. He had been 17 and a half back then, and fighting Kaguya all alone, due to Sasuke being injured earlier. It was easily the toughest battle of his life, lasting several weeks of non-stop fighting. In the end he emerged from it victorious, with Kaguya on the ground, mortally wounded from their fierce battle. Truthfully, Naruto had merely survived the fight to the death with the goddess. Kaguya had beaten him to within an inch of his life and broke nearly every bone in his body over the course of the battle. It was only Kurama using all of its remaining chakra to heal him, and Naruto's skill in senjutsu that allowed him to outlast her after Sasuke somehow cut Kaguya off from accessing more chakra through her prisoners stuck in the infinite Tsukiyomi. By the end, Naruto had been little more than a giant human-shaped bruise, extremely low on chakra, and merely the victor cause. Unlike Kaguya, he wasn't quite dying from his injuries. Unfortunately, even in defeat, the legendary rabbit goddess was a sore loser and had one last trick up her sleeve for him before she died. Naruto remembered as she lay at his feet dying, how she laughed a bitter remorseful laugh before saying, "If I won't ever see my garden again, then neither will you. Perish, Naruto Uzumaki." The sudden build-up of what was left of her monstrously powerful chakra was all Naruto was able to sense before the world turned pure white around him and he resigned himself to an end. He had very little memory of what happened afterwards, but he expected to die after the technique activated. He did not though. Instead of death, Naruto ended up flung somewhere else, somewhere beyond both the elemental nations and Earth, somewhere extremely dangerous. His memories of that in-between place were faded, but he still remembered how it felt and that someone had found him there and began talking to him. What was said was beyond him, but he came out of that in-between place, forever changed because of it. It was from there that he was sent to the planet Earth. 3 weeks ago Naruto woke up in a random alley in Gotham City, physically 5 years older than he last remembered. His body was now that of someone in their early 20s, despite having no memories of ever aging. He also now stood at 6'3" feet as opposed to the 5'5" feet he once was, and at 174 pounds, weighed an additional 62 pounds than he remembered. Every fiber of every muscle in his body was perfectly toned from a lifetime of combat and training. He lacked the bulkiness of Superman or even Batman, and was closer in form to the Flash, due to his preference of speed over power, though slightly bigger than the speedster. Even his hair that had always been a perfect spiky golden blonde, now had a large splotch of white just above his forehead bangs. A remnant from his Otsutsuki heritage. His increased height and weight had necessitated new clothes, cause his old ones were shredded. Lucky for him, Madame Xanadu foresaw his arrival on Earth and was waiting with a cab and a fresh change of clothes at the mouth of the alley he appeared in. She had foreseen not only his arrival with her precognition, but all the good he would do for the world, and she decided to help provide him with clothing, food, shelter and information while he got his feet under him. Naruto owed the immortal witch a great debt of gratitude for everything she had been doing for him over the weeks. A debt he was determined to repay someday. Naruto currently wore black military cargo pants, with combat boots and a black t-shirt, with an orange flame pattern adorning its edges. All in all he looked pretty normal aside from his 3 whisker-like birthmarks on each cheek, which people passed off as some kind of genetic anomaly when they noticed them. However, Naruto was anything but normal now. Even beyond what was normally considered his peak ability, Naruto's pure strength, speed, durability and regenerative powers had all steeply increased since awakening on Earth. Every single one of his senses had also been heightened to new levels, so much so that even in his base form, he felt like he was constantly in sage mode. The sudden changes had necessitated finding an abandoned warehouse and spending 3 days mastering his heightened senses. He had then entered sage mode to confirm for himself that he could still do it and that it was not somehow active. He almost had a heart attack when he found that his sage mode was not active. When he finally activated sage mode, Naruto discovered he was vastly more powerful, to the point that it actually terrified him. He felt like he could juggle mountains with ease and punt Madara halfway across the planet if the Uchiha fought him, the way he was now. There was just something ridiculously powerful about the nature energy of this world, or was it nature energies? As far as Naruto could tell, Sage Mode wasn't pulling in just one type of energy whenever he gathered nature energy for Sage Mode, but several different powerful energies. Luckily he was a pro at balancing different kinds of powerful energies and using them to empower himself. He hadn't tried them out yet, but Naruto suspected that Kurama Chakra Mode, Kurama Sage Mode and 6-Path Sage Mode would only further heighten his abilities beyond normal, despite his already ridiculous power upgrade. In the end, Naruto wasn't sure whether the power boost to his base form had come from growing 5 years older before he woke up, killing Kaguya, or the sheer potency of the natural energies of this world. He personally leaning towards having grown more powerful as he aged, but he could be wrong. Even so, Naruto believed it was fortunate that he'd grown so much stronger due to the threats this world faced. For while he was new to this world, enough had been covered in different news articles to point out that the dangers it regularly faced were vastly greater than anything he had encountered in the elemental nations. Even Superman, who was far more physically powerful than him, had enemies that could match his seemingly limitless strength and possibly exceed it. That thought actually terrified Naruto. He was very confident in his fighting skills and chakra abilities, but there was a reason Superman was called Superman, and Naruto did not want to tango with any of the Man of Steel's sparring partners if he could help it. Speaking of Superman, it was about time the two met for a chat according to Xanadu. Naruto would have preferred to reveal himself to the world and its protectors at a much later time, but some things, it seemed, couldn't be helped. Particularly when, today was a day the world would potentially end if key heroes did not gather beside Superman. It helped that he had a mysterious box he had confiscated from a monster that had defeated in National City yesterday, after Madame Xanadu's directed him there. With all the information he had been gathering about Earth since his arrival, Naruto easily noted that the markings on the cube were not of Earth. He had pressed Madame Xanadu for answers on this mystery, and she had merely told him they were most likely alien in origin. So what better idea was there than to ask the only confirmed alien he knew about for answers? Superman loved to help people, right, so this would probably be right up the guy's alley. Rising to his feet, his icy sapphire eyes took in the faint glow of the dusk on the skyline, and then he turned west as he began to ascend it into the air. It had been a pain in the ass to get the third Tsuchikage Inoki to teach him the secret to flight, mostly because Naruto was the son of Iwa's greatest enemy, but everyone had had to make great sacrifices in the war for the sake of peace. Turning towards the direction he knew Metropolis was located in, Naruto shot off at well past Mach 6, creating a loud sonic boom in his wake. "Oh man, and we were just getting to the good part." Naruto whined childishly as he looked down at the group of 4 vigilantes from on top of a street lamppost he'd been crouching on. His words were more than sufficient to startle everyone present, who were all surprised to find him silently watching them from his perch. Superman was especially shocked due his super hearing failing to pick up Naruto's heartbeat or something. The sun had gone down, and it was much later in the evening when Naruto stumbled across this admittedly interesting sight. He had been searching the Metropolis skyline for Superman when he picked up loud explosion green flashes of light with his enhanced hearing. It made it easy for him to hunt down the benevolent alien, who would no doubt be at the epicenter of it all. What he hadn't expected was to find Superman trying his best to pummel the vigilantes Batman and Green Lantern to do death. Weren't they all supposed to be good guys? Naruto was about to intervene and hopefully save the two when it became unnecessary due to a new arrival. 1 second Superman was beating the absolute tar out of a green spherical barrier Green Lantern had erected, and the next something hit him. Naruto called it something because whatever it was fast and left streaks of yellow lightning wherever it went. However, Naruto knew that it couldn't have been lightning, cause Naruto himself was faster than lightning, and yet he couldn't even keep up with this thing due to its frankly frightening speed. Admittedly, he was still in his base form, and entering Sage Mode or Kurama mode would definitely allow him to at least visually keep track of it properly. However, that would have also give away his position, and Naruto felt his intuition telling him that he could learn a lot more by simply observing for a moment from the sidelines. It was only after the thing finally stopped that Naruto realized it was in fact a man in a red outfit, and not just any man, but the Central City vigilante, the Flash. For a few milliseconds he ran circles around Superman, who tried to physically catch the Flash with his own impressive speed, but the Flash was simply far too fast. That said, the lightning-encased speedster was also too overconfident in his speed and got too close to Superman, who surprised him by flicking him on the forehead and sending the speedster flying 30 meters away, into a car. Noting the casual and unnecessary destruction of property, Naruto felt he understood why vigilantes were really unpopular with the US government. Finally, Batman decided that enough was enough and courageously stepped between Superman and others. With a single sentence he stopped Superman from punting them all halfway across Metropolis. That was no surprise to Naruto. He knew the power of a few honest words and the effect they could have on people. Honest words had changed Haku, Zabuza, Gaara, Obito, and he'd like to think Sasuke too, but that might have just been the war. They had all been changed by his words, from evil people into good, and they were simply the most extreme examples. How many more people had come to believe in him simply due to a few words? What was a surprise, however, was the familiar alien box that Batman carried under his arm. Naruto speculated that Batman must have come here to see Superman for similar reasons as himself, due to the box's unearthly nature. And with that knowledge, Naruto decided to reveal himself to them. "Who are you supposed to be?" Flash asked, as surprised as everyone else that they hadn't noticed Naruto crouching there. But then again, with Superman on a rampage, who would have paid attention to the top of a single isolated street lamp? It's not like it was a normal place for people to crouch. Waving the alien box for all of them to see, Naruto responded. Just another guy who was curious about these alien-looking boxes and the creatures carrying them. Tossing his own box down at Flash, who caught he continued. "I thought I might ask Big Blue and Red over there if he knew what they were. But when I got here you were all pretty busy fighting each other, so I figured I would just watch and see how it ended. I am glad I did too. You heroes all have pretty interesting abilities." "You're not a hero?" Superman asked, picking up on his choice of words. "If by hero you mean a vigilante running around a city in tights, trying to make it better, then no, I am not that." Naruto replied somewhat sarcastically, but his tone was lighthearted. "Sure, he respected them and what they did, but seriously, tights. I am a warrior more than anything else, but one who's never been able to turn his back on humanity when it needed help, kind of like it does now. Anyways, now that you are no longer fighting and Superman clearly knows nothing about these boxes, as do the rest of you, I think I will tag along with you guys, at least until you find something. From what little I observed, Batman seems pretty smart and skilled at figuring things out. I am sure we can all come up with something together." "Wow there, kid. This job is dangerous and we can't just have a rookie running around. You don't even have a suit or mask to hide your identity. We can't just let another civilian Green Lantern begin only to be cut off." His hand placed itself on his shoulder. Startled, Green Lantern spun around to find a second Naruto standing right next to him, who asked. "You're Green Lantern, right? The same guy the Air Force is after, right?" Shrugging the hand of his shoulder as he stepped back from Naruto to give himself some, he replied. Ah yeah. And how the hell are there two of you? Are you twins or something? That one is my clone, a temporary copy of myself for you to attack in the event you turned out to be hostile after I revealed myself. I believe that's unnecessary now. Naruto said, as the clone on the lampus disappeared in cloud of smoke, leaving only the one near Green Lantern. Also, I am not a civilian, I am a ninja and trust me when I say we are not like your pop culture likes to depict. I have all kinds abilities that you couldn't even dream up on your best day, so quit it with the rookie shit. I've been saving lives since I was 12. But that Naruto smirked as he held up Green Lantern's power ring to show off to the space cop, whose Green Lantern uniform was beginning to disappear. Looking to his finger where he realized that indeed his power ring was missing, Green Lantern glared at Naruto who was toying with the ring and yelled. When did he? In unison Batman and Naruto replied. You weren't concentrating. That's mine. Green Lantern yelled before calling the ring back to his finger through his connection to it. He then turned to Batman and said. And this time doesn't count, is he your son or something spooky? No. Was Batman's one-word reply. Naruto watched the two, finding some amusement in Green Lantern nickname for Batman. There was a whole story there that he didn't quite understand yet. Turning to Superman, Naruto said. Now that we've established I can take care of myself, can we get going before those helicopters show up? You have super hearing too? Superman asked, surprised at the revelation from the young man who had joined their ranks. Naruto nodded in response, to which Superman then explained. That would be the army, which means Lex Luthor isn't far behind. Not a fan of Lex Luthor, I take it? Batman asked, his own disdain for the billionaire audible in his tone, despite the fact that his mask and dark body armor kept his face and body language mostly hidden. No. Superman replied before turning to Naruto and asking. So what do we call you? My name is Naruto Uzumaki, a remnant of the Uzumaki clan of shinobis. You can all call me Sage though, for now at least, or Naruto. I'll be honest, I don't particularly care about hiding my identity, and I have ways to disguise my appearance if it ever became a problem. The shinobi explained. Sage it is then. Seeing as you are already here, you are welcome to tag along. Batman said, welcoming him to the group, no doubt to keep a closer eye on him and get whatever information he could out of him. Naruto almost felt like he was back home and was beginning to like the darkly clad vigilante for it. That clear guys. I will clean up. Flash suddenly volunteered as he motioned to the mess that was formerly their battleground. Blurring away at speeds that would have made lightning envious, the red-clad speedster rapidly began to repair all the damage from the fight earlier. Naruto had to admire the guy and his attitude if he was willing to clean up after his messes. Figuring he shouldn't leave all the work to Flash, Naruto joined him with his own super speed, helping Flash fix whatever they could. After all, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and all that jazz. In mere minutes, all the damages from the fight that had spanned the entire downtown area were quickly repaired and Metropolis was looking good again. Then a small fleet of army helicopters showed up and the 5 heroes decided to escape through a sewer, much to Green Lantern's chagrin. With a smile on his face, Naruto thought to himself. This might actually turn out to be fun. A ninja and his 4 vigilante companions found themselves in an old abandoned factory belonging to the Daily Planet. It was an abandoned printing press and apparently acted as Superman's base of operations until he could find a proper one. Batman seemed less than impressed with it and voiced his opinion. An abandoned printing press. Don't you have place to go hang your cape at the end of the day? You don't wear a mask so you don't have an identity to hide. I don't have a base of operations. Superman defended. And you Sage? Batman asked Naruto who was quietly listening to both Superman and Batman's conversation as well as Flash and Green Lanterns further off. I was trained to blend into the shadows and one of my powers allows me to disguise myself as other people or things. I don't really need anything elaborate right now. Naruto spoke up, giving a little worthless information to get them to relax a little more around him. Batman tensed momentarily upon hearing this revelation, but did indeed relax a second later. Curious about his abilities, Flash shifted his attention to them and asked. What other powers do you have? You said earlier that you could disguise yourself and we've already seen you use super speed as well as make copies of yourself. I can manipulate the elements, I'm stronger than everyone here except Superman and pretty durable. I can fly too, but I am not very good at it yet. Theirs is also more, but I'll keep that to myself for now. Naruto replied. Truthfully, he had thousands of different techniques, but it was best to give out information on only a handful and have them think he was more limited. You don't trust us? Superman accused. The Kryptonian must have picked up something in his tone, he did have better senses than Naruto after all. Naruto merely shrugged, figuring it would be a waste of time to try and pretend, then replied. Not one of us completely trusts the other, except for Flash and Green Lantern who are apparently friends. I only revealed as much I did so we have a basic understanding of what I can bring to the table. And to gain enough trust for you guys to work comfortably with me, but I'm not just going spill all my secrets to people who were complete strangers to me less than an hour. Those secrets you will have to earn. Reasonable. Batman said before he and Superman continued their private conversation. Flash, Green Lantern and Naruto meanwhile moved closer to the two alien boxes to examine them. Ping. This can't be good. Naruto muttered as he took a closer look at the two alien boxes hovering in midair, where they were suspended by a field of emerald energy coming from Green Lantern's ring. He had just noticed that they both made that ping sound at the same time, as if they were both receiving information from the same place. That or talking to each other, neither possibility was very welcome. We should probably split these boxes up. Agreed. Those ping sounds they keep making might be messages they are transmitting to one another or to another party. The creature that was carrying my box blew up trying to take us with it. That's military tactics, and they act like expendable soldiers dedicated to finishing the mission at any cost. They've also been planting these boxes at strategic location. Metropolis, Gotham, and you said yours came from National City, right? I'm worried we might be staring down the barrel of a full-scale invasion here. Batman explained, filling the room with an uneasy air as everyone silently contemplated his words. That's paranoid. Green Lantern said, breaking the silence. A full-scale planetary invasion wasn't something anyone wanted to really consider, so it was naturally easier to just dismiss it as paranoia or superstition. The truth was a hard pill to swallow after all. A little paranoia isn't bad in this job, Green Lantern. A friend of mine warned me that today would be a dark day. She was the one who sent me to confront the creature in National City where I found my box. I would rather be ready if a war is coming. Naruto said. National City is your stomping grounds? Batman asked. No, I was just passing through. I'm more of a wandering sage, seeing the world, helping wherever I can. Or at least I was trying to be before this mess started up. Naruto replied. Ping. There it goes again with that creepy sound. Why not just crack one of these boxes open and see for ourselves what's inside? We have a spare. Green Lantern suggested as he motioned towards the boxes. Frowning Batman replied. Because without any idea of what these boxes contain, who knows what might come spilling out, radiation, disease or something worse. I can run one to a lab and do a full spectrum beepasis on it in case of fingerprints, DNA or anything else that might give us a lead as to what these things are and where they may have been. Flash offered. Turning to him, Batman said. You sound like a cop. I am a cop, I work in a crime lab. Flash confirmed. Elbowing the speedster in the ribs, Green Lantern not so subtly said. Barry, you're giving away your secret identity. And you just called me Barry Genius. Flash said with a glare at Green Lantern for revealing his name. Those two had a strange friendship in Naruto's opinion. I can't see anything when I try to look through the box's casing. Superman said, floating closer to the box, his eyes glowing faint pale blue. Bewildered, Flash asked. You can see through the casing? I can see through most things. Superman casually confirmed. Everyone suddenly turned to look at Naruto to see if he had anything to add, since he had been silent for a bit. Shaking his head, Naruto replied. I am not like him. I do have pretty good eyesight and reaction time though. Everyone then turned to Batman as Green Lantern asked mockingly. What about you, what can you do? I can keep us focused. Batman firmly responded. Ping. Ah. A short but pain-filled scream tore itself from Naruto's throat as his right hand began to glow, and the yang seal that Hagoromo had once gave him began to glow a brilliant white in the center of his palm. Around the white circle, 9 black tomo formed, making it look like a pictogram of the sun. Going up the length of his right arm, red flame-like tribal markings appeared and finally connected to a diamond-shaped mark surrounding by 2 wing patterns, right between his shoulder blades. It was a mark he had received on the day he killed Kaguya. Sage, the hell's going on with you? Your arm is glowing like a damn flashlight. Batman barked at him as the pain began to recede. It had felt like he was being branded, like his skin had been flayed raw and every nerve ending exposed before being dipped acid. But he had also learned something while the process was going on. My apologies, Batman. My powers seem to be reacting negatively to the boxes. It's like they are trying to protect me from those boxes. Naruto explained after taking deep breaths. What had just happened was something new and strange, and it worried him immensely. Especially since both the yang seal and the marking he'd received from killing Kaguya had activated simultaneously. Why had they activated? Was it because whatever was coming was nearly here? These questions would remain unanswered for his attention shifted to Green Lantern, who moved closer as if to touch the boxes, but dot. Ping. 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 Dot ping. Ping 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 ping. What the? I didn't touch anything. The Emerald Theme hero yelped as he jumped backwards. The boxes both began pinging at faster and faster intervals, as if it was a countdown. Naruto could feel his power begin to rage in response, as if trying to empower him further, even in his base state. It was almost time. They activated themselves. Superman yelled as the volume and frequency of the pings increased. Moving into action, Batman pointed at the boxes and yelled. Green Lantern, isolate those boxes, we don't know what they might end up releasing when fully active. Green Lantern responded by doing as Batman ordered, a shell of emerald energy encased each in a large spherical force field. He then moved them to the other side of the room in case the boxes exploded or something. They didn't, at least not in the way anyone would have expected. The OOMMM. Green Lantern was barely done tossing the 2 boxes away when they were all hit with a wall of sound. 2 large portals had suddenly bloomed into existence, one originating from each box. Big enough and forceful enough that they shattered Green Lantern's force fields just by opening. Out of the portals emerged the very same type of monsters as the one Naruto had initially defeated to recover his box. Only this time, it wasn't just 1 or 2 of the monsters, but hundreds, and all of them were headed straight their way. Looks like Batman's invasion theory was right. The monsters were the stuff of nightmares, standing at about 7.5 feet tall, with arms bigger and bulkier than Superman's thighs. They were humanoid in form, 20 razor-sharp claws on each hand and foot, replacing the digits traditionally located there, clearly designed for tearing through flesh and bone. Their skin was putrid green and had a leather-like consistency to it, their eyes covered by red goggle-like visors, glowed like hellish embers. They had a mouth filled with rows upon rows of razor-sharp teeth, beyond which lay a maw that burned a molten orange, and from which the monsters could spew fire, like some kinds of humanoid dragon. From their backs they could sprout bat-like wings for flight, while their flesh was mostly protected by a strange bronze-colored metal that was fused to their skin in a way that was most certainly painful. He would have pitied them, yet instinctively knew that pity was something wasted on the creatures. They were an enemy that needed to be killed, and quickly. They hadn't even existed the portal, yet these creatures set off every single one of Naruto's instincts. His empathic abilities easily picking up what to him felt like pure evil. A mindless, all-consuming evil that simply radiated from the monsters and would soon begin corrupting the world around them. It was as if they were so heavily steeped in evil that it formed an aura around them that was almost tangible. The Shinobi Godslayer utterly hated it. Growling at the creatures, the sun symbol pattern in the palm of his hand flared even brighter in response to the invaders. Golden chakra slowly began to coat his right forearm, giving it an ethereal glow. Meanwhile, Naruto's eyes shifted from sapphire blue crystals to a flame-like yellow-orange, his pupils shifting into toad-like horizontal bars. It was a visual indicator that he had entered Sage mode and an unspoken promise of the world of hurt the invading fiends were about to find themselves in. Just as the first monster crossed the event horizon of the portal with a horrendous cry of, "For Darkseid," Naruto moved. He moved so fast that the concrete beneath his feet shattered in series of spiderweb cracks spanning over 10 meters. The air in front of him formed a cone around him and blossomed outwards in a shockwave, displaced by his mere passing. Behind him, air rushed back into the vacuum he had created, bringing with it a thunderous sonic boom that shattered every window in the abandoned building. And then he was in front of the enemy. The demonic-looking creature did not have time to react before his fist connected with its solar plexus. It didn't even have time to realize it was dead before it flew backwards in a shockwave of energy, its whole body incinerating from the sheer force of the punch. The incinerated creature and blast of superheated air carrying its remains slammed straight into its invading companions, behind where it previously stood and bowled over the rest of the creatures and throwing them right back into the portal. One of the demons that had managed to dodge around Naruto's attack tried to fly past him. However, his hand reached out and grabbed it by the face before slamming it into the ground so forcefully it created a small earth tremor. With a mighty stop on its chest to keep it from moving, Naruto glared at the invaders and flared his killing intent at them. For a moment the invasion, at least the part coming through these 2 portals, ground to a complete and utter halt as everyone stared at Naruto in shock, heroes and demons alike. Naruto took note of none of this, glaring murderously straight at the demons. He barked an order in a tone so dead that it would have stopped even a rampaging tailed beast in its tracks. Retreat or die. It was just for a few seconds, 3 seconds to be exact, yet in that moment every single one the creatures feared him. Survival instincts that had supposedly been bred out suddenly kicking and making them all take a step back. Unfortunately, it only worked for a moment and a second later they all simultaneously retorted. For Darkseid. Feeling he needed to answer this challenge, Naruto said the first thing that came to mind, but rather than shouted, he simply whispered back. For the will of fire. Then he moved again. Naruto scowled as he ducked under the claws of one of the monsters before shoulder, checking it aside with enough force that it cleared a path through its companions that had moved to surround him. Not a second later, he used a hole to escape while leaving an explosive tag behind that was already activated. The detonation caught 10 of the monsters in a ball of flame, light in pressure, but there were thousands more invading Earth through more portals each second. A well-timed roundhouse kick connected with the head of a monster that thought him distracted enough to sneak up upon, said head was torn from the monster's shoulders. Naruto then spun low and then extended his foot into a sweeping kick to drop a follow-up monster, before lifting his foot and bringing it down in a heel drop kick on the fallen monster's armored chest, crushing it. Sidestepping a blast orange flame spewing from another of the monsters. Naruto lodged a kunai down its throat for its troubles, before crossing his fingers in the clone seal and muttering. Mass shadow clone technique. A moment later 1,000 clones surrounded him and he ordered. Spread out across the city, secure the civilians, report in any intel you might consider valuable and kill any monsters in your way. When you're done await further instructions. Yes sir. 1,000 voices replied in unison before dispersing in 1,000 different directions fast enough to create a buffeting wind. With his clones on the counterattack, the original Naruto and his vigilante comrades had a bit of breathing room. They had been on the brink of being overrun by the sheer number of monsters invading Metropolis, especially after they all started converging on the group's location due to the fierce resistance the vigilantes were putting up. Thankfully that all changed the moment Naruto created his clones. 1,000 copies of Naruto with similar strength, speed and skill, all very well coordinated and tearing into the monsters while saving civilians. In the blink of an eye the whole battlefield situation seemed to reverse itself as pairs of Naruto clones rapidly tag-teamed the uncoordinated monsters and ripped them to shreds. Sometimes quite literally, as one clone would grab one limb and while the second would grab another and then they would simply pull in different directions. His clones knew not use any chakra-intensive techniques like Rasengan so that they would last longer. In fact they were determined to conserve as much of their chakra as possible. This was a war, not a skirmish. It likely wouldn't end in a day, barring some kind of miracle, so he needed to use his power as efficiently as possible. Dropkicking one of the monsters then had tried to attack Batman from his blind spot, he asked. Now, what? These things are just gonna keep coming, and this clearly isn't an isolated incident. The bolt of yellow lightning blurred past as Flash literally slapped half a dozen of the monsters nearby, the sheer speed and impact behind it actually cooking the monsters in their armor. He came a stop near Batman and Sage, where he said. Sage is right guys. I'm getting radio broadcasts through my earpiece, this invasion is happening all around the world. People are blaming us for it. The massive green fly swatter smacked dozens of the monsters out of the sky after they took to the air or squashed them on the ground if they didn't. Green Lantern, who while exhausted looked like he was having fun, said. What else is new, Flash? Lantern, concentrate. Your mind is scattered, your constructs are fading. You need calm down, Batman yelled, noting that whenever Green Lantern stopped focusing on his constructs, they began disappearing. A very bad thing when his force fields were also being used to create a safe haven for civilians caught in the crossfire. I am calm, I'm always calm. Green Lantern argued. Shaking his head as he threw Batarang one the monster with wings extended, swooping down to pick a child. It exploded horrifically. That's not what it looks like. He disputed. Green Lantern merely snorted as he replied. You should worry about yourself. You're the one without powers. Wait. Batman doesn't have powers? Flash asked, feeling rather alarmed by this revelation. Seeing as this could undermine their quickly developing teamwork, Naruto jumped in saying. No, but he has better training than all of you. He's also a better tactician and leader than the rest of us. I didn't pick him to be in charge. Green Lantern refused. No one did, yet he is the only one who's really stepped up for the role. Naruto pointed out. He personally could have taken up the role, but from what little he had observed both today and over the past few weeks. Batman was a far better strategist and leader. In a way the bat-themed hero reminded Naruto of Shikamaru Nara and Shikaku Nara when it came to strategy, data beepsis and formulating brilliant plans. A scary thought, considering he's just an ordinary human that trained themselves till they were pushing the limits. That's not entirely true. You have leadership qualities of your own. Batman pointed out. Naruto did not deny, instead replying. That's true, but they are inferior to yours. All your copies seem to obey you just fine, Sage. Green Lantern said, more cause he wanted anyone but Batman to be the team leader. With greater preferences for himself to take the role. Of course they would, they are all me. Besides, micromanaging them across the country and possibly the world will take a hell of lot less effort than truly leading a team of strangers who barely know anything about each other. Yet Batman has already started beepizing our strengths and weakness, as well as the most effective ways to deploy us against the enemy and win. Make no mistake people, this world is at war, and this team needs someone to lead us through it. I vote Batman, at least until someone more suitable shows up, that is if such a person even exists. Superman, who had flown closer to join the conversation thanks to the reduction of monsters in the area, courtesy of Naruto's clones, said. Sage has a point, and he's the guy who's given us enough breathing room to actually talk and come up with a plan. Of us all, I feel Batman has come up with the most plans to deal with the problem and shown a greater understanding of the world and the enemy's way of thinking than the rest of us. Not to mention that he did all this while we were fighting. So I'll second Sage's vote. Batman is pretty smart, but for the record, I can't outthink all of you combined if I wanted to. My mind works thousands of times faster than yours, but it's geared toward science, not military strategy and leadership. Batman has my vote. Flash chipped in. Seeing that the rest of us had voted on the leader, Green Lantern huffed as he threw his hands in the air before turning to Batman and saying. I'm not gonna say it's spooky. But I'm clearly outvoted here, so for now if you lead I'll follow. Batman nodded, a small smile on his lips before it shifted back to a more serious look as he said. In that case, we need to shut down the portals here in Metropolis first. I don't know about shutting them down, but I can create barriers around the portals that will trap anything that exits them. Naruto offered. Can your clones create these barriers too? Batman inquired. Nodding his head, Naruto replied. Yes. They can do just about anything I can do. Good. Flash, you will scout out the city and find any portals. Naruto, have your clones begin sealing of the portals. Lantern, I want you in the air, you are shiny, so I need you to keep those monsters' attention focused on you. That will keep them away from civilians. Use hit and run tactics, make them chase you. Batman rattled off a bunch of orders. I will give you a couple of clones to help. Naruto offered to Green Lantern, who nodded at him in gratefulness. And what about me? Superman asked, curious about his role in this sudden turn of events. Civilians. You're their last line of defense. Two of the orders Sage gave to his clones were securing civilians and gathering valuable intel. Once Flash is done with locating portals, he will need to find a spot further inland, but within the city limits that can hold millions of people. Flash and some clones of Sage will then evacuating whoever they can find to there. He will guard them. You can also use your super hearing and your ability to see through walls to spot anyone in need of help, then direct Flash or Sage there. Batman explained, Superman nodding, surprisingly content with his role. What about you, Batman? Naruto chose to ask. So far he was dishing out orders and roles for the rest of the team, but had yet to say anything about what he was going to do. I will be retasking a couple of satellites to other cities and parts of the globe to figure out where we go next and what strategy to implement there. I'll also need to find a way to get the US and other governments off our asses while we work. Batman explained. Wait a minute. You have a satellite? Green Lantern exclaimed in disbelief. About a dozen actually. Batman replied with smirk before adding. What? My superpower is being rich. But enough jokes, after we settle things here we are going to Washington DC next. Gotham is closer, and you are from Gotham. Aren't you worried about protecting your city? Superman asked. Batman paused, and Naruto could sense that he was troubled by the thought. However, it was only for a moment. They could all hear the steel in his resolve as he replied. I am. But if Gotham falls, it's just one dead city. If the capital falls, we are looking at the fall of America itself. Sighing tiredly, Naruto sat down, crossing his legs while saying. In that case, I better start gathering energy for more clones. If I gather enough natural energy from the planet, I can deploy clones all across the globe. They will at the very least be able to keep the monsters distracted long enough for us to get there. Though this will take a lot out of me, and since you're rich, you mind paying for my vacation when this is over, cause I am going to need one. Pick a private island. I'll buy it and build a mansion for you to relax on. Batman replied in a dead serious tone, making Naruto and the other pause. Exasperated by the rich superhero's response, Naruto pointed out. You know I was joking, right? That last bit about vacation, I mean. Oh, I know. Batman said with a smirk. It had been over half an hour since the monsters had started attacking, and Princess Diana of Themyscira had carved a bloody trail from Washington all the way to Metropolis, with naught but her sword and golden lasso in hand. Hundreds had already been saved by her on this trek, and the monsters, instinctively understanding the threat she was, prioritized her over the civilians. In fact, the more she fought, the more were drawn towards her, so she felt comfortable leaving the civilians behind. It helped that Colonel Steve Trevor, the first male she had ever laid eyes on, was helping direct the local military defenses against the monsters, so it wasn't like these people didn't have any defenders whatsoever. As an Amazon princess, it was her duty to exterminate any monsters threatening man's world wherever she found them. And she had overheard a lieutenant report to the colonel that large swarms of the monsters were flying towards Metropolis for some reason. With that knowledge, Diana had located the nearest map and made a beeline straight for the so-called City of Tomorrow, killing thousands of monsters along the way. When she finally arrived on the outskirts of Metropolis, Diana witnessed what had to be the most bizarre battle of her entire 1500 years of life. It was chaos everywhere as two armies clashed in bloody battle. On one side fought the invading monsters, too numerous to properly count their numbers in the heat of battle, but easily well over 10,000. Some filled the air like a swarm of giant locusts, while others attacked from the ground. From their mouths spewed orange flames, hot enough to turn the ground molten and set the surrounding forests and buildings ablaze. Yet for all their numbers the monsters were completely unable to set even 1 foot into the city limits due to the opposing army. If the invading army was an endless swarm, this new rival army was ruthless efficiency given form. The opposing army was comprised of blonde-haired warriors in dark clothing, wielding strange triangular knives and some of the most impressive hand-to-hand combat skills she had ever seen. Their hand-to-hand was better than anything she had been taught on Themyscira, and his blade work with those knives was equally impressive. It was clear to see even from a great distance that every single one of them had been wielding those knives for a lifetime. Diana had the sudden urge to cross blades with these strange warriors and test their skills for herself. However, such thoughts were forgotten as she took a closer look at the warriors. They were all similar, far too similar for it to be natural. It was as if she was staring at copies of the same person, and the more she looked, the more it became apparent that all of them really were the same. A singular being, she eventually concluded, yet she was impressed by how all the copies were acting independently of each other. Their unnatural nature was further proven when one of the copies was overwhelmed and took an unlucky blow to the gut, getting its intestines shredded. Instead of bleeding out on floor with horrific screams coming from his mouth, like such an injury demanded, there was a burst of smoke as the copy simply vanished out of existence. Magic. Extremely powerful magic. She concluded. Meanwhile, all the other copies of the warrior flinched and rubbed their stomachs, as if feeling the pain of their counterpart's demise. Their retribution for the death of the fallen copy was equally swift and painful for the enemy. In the blink of an eye, several monsters had their limbs, torsos and heads sliced off or apart and bled out. She was even able to catch one of the blonde warrior copies split one of the monsters from chin to crotch with a sword made of wind. It was an application of magic she had never heard of. Wind didn't just cut things, it pushed, it buffeted, it carried, it did not slice like Amazonian steel. Not wanting to get caught in the crossfire of the major battle, Diana tried to sneak through an area of the battlefield that was less chaotic. She made good progress, cutting down any monsters in her way, and was even on the brink of entering the city limits. However, she must not have been paying as much attention to her surrounding as she normally would, because just as she crossing an abandoned street, she was suddenly ambushed by a dozen of the monsters. They must have had the same idea as her or something, that is if they could think. Though surprised, she was prepared to cut them all down. She had faced hundreds of their kind on her way here, so 12 more were of no concern to her. As she was preparing to engage them in battle though, Diana felt a sudden bout of vertigo, and for a moment her vision darkened as the world blurred and twisted in unnatural ways. When her vision cleared again, she found herself standing on a roof a little further within the city limits. Below, in the street where she was previously standing, was a copy of the warrior fighting the monster. It had been horrifically skewered by multiple clawed hands, but instead of exploding in smoke like the other had, this one stuck out his tongue in a childish manner without a care in the world for the fact it was literally skewered to death. Then right before her eyes, the copy turned into pure lightning. By Zeus, that's enough lightning to cook the monsters in their armor. She thought in amazement as she watched exactly that happen to all 12 monsters. Lightning shadow clones are pretty impressive, aren't they? A voice said from behind her. Spinning around, she found another one of the blonde warriors behind her, whom she immediately asked. Who are you? She was relatively sure that he had no intention to harm, especially after he had gone out of his way to save her, though it wasn't actually necessary. The blonde warrior merely gave her friendly smile and replied. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, but I go by the codename Sage for now. I take it you are that lady from Washington, the one everyone is calling Wonderwoman. From your stance I can tell that you are a real warrior, and even though I did it, my gut is telling me that saving you was completely unnecessary. I am Diana, Princess of Themyscira, and yes, I am a warrior, an Amazon warrior. I take it you are the original. She then gestured to the army of other blondes still fighting off the invading monsters. I've seen a number of your copies explode in smoke or lightning when they die. She announced to his amusement. Shaking his head, the now named Naruto replied. Unfortunately, no. I am but a temporary copy created by the original Naruto Uzumaki, with his memories and fighting abilities to keep this horde monsters at bay. The real Sage is with the other heroes and warriors further in the city. He is gathering energy to fuel our existence, coordinating the different armies of clones all across the city. Our job is to keep the enemy at bay, while he and the others like us come up with a plan to deal with the invasion and evacuate the civilians. I would request you meet up with them, they have a plan in place, and sooner rather than later we will need your skills as a warrior to win this war. This war is a global event, and we fear that the worst is yet to come. Nodding upon hearing this and marveling at the fact that all the Narutos she could see were a single person fighting all across the city, she then replied. Then I will be on my way, Sage. It was a pleasure to meet you. Likewise, my friend. Naruto replied with a charming smile before leaping off into the midst of the fray. With a smile, Wonder Woman turned towards the heart of the city and began to sprint as fast as she could towards this assemblage of warriors and heroes. If things were only going to get worse from here on out, then she needed to be at heart of the matter, where she could best thrust her blade into the problem. It was merely desperation in the world's hour of need that brought us together. That desperation led to a team capable of doing together what no one of us could have managed on our own, and we saved the world in the process. However, where desperation brought us together, it's our desire to protect what we cherish most that keeps this team fighting, no matter the odds. And trust me when I say, we jealously protect what we care about, regardless of the personal cost to us. Naruto Uzumaki on the formation of the Justice League. A small park in Midvale, Metropolis. Diana raised her sword, the flat of her blade, deflecting a staccato of shuriken aimed at her vitals, while her left hand blocked a trio of bicycle kicks aimed for her head. Grabbing the offending limb, she slammed her attacker towards the ground in retaliation, her divine strength ensuring that the collision would crack it on impact, except it didn't. In a display of impressive flexibility, the Naruto clone she was fighting twisted around in midair and brought his hands down into a handstand to halt the devastating impact, then his free leg whipped out low and at her feet. Distracted with deflecting a kunai that was simultaneously thrown at her heart by one of Naruto's free hands, Diana missed the ninja's leg and got knocked off her feet. Despite the tactic catching her off guard, Princess Diana still had the presence of mind to kick Naruto away from her, even as she fell onto her back. The kick was instantly blocked, but still powerful enough to send him skidding through the grass, away from her. Unwilling to give him chance to recover, the Amazon princess rolled to her feet and pursued him. Unfortunately, Naruto with a fancy kick up was on his feet almost as soon as she was and charged right back at her with impressive speed. Her sword flashed down in a stroke to cleave him apart from crown to crotch and was promptly blocked by two kunai covered in golden chakra. The clash of weapons proving powerful enough to disperse the air around them in a small shockwave and crack the ground beneath their feet. Naruto grinned at this, his blood clearly pumping as they enjoyed the haze of battle, Diana's own face mirroring his expression. A second later, steel clashed between them repeatedly at speeds that were dizzying as Diana attacked, defended and countered almost simultaneously. Blow after the blow, she was pushed to the edge of her swordsmanship by Naruto and his knife work. Finally, after what had to be the 50th such clash, Naruto's kunai shattered in his hands. She smirked and tried to decapitate him, but he ducked low and spun into a reverse sweep kick. Diana back flipped over it, her hand reaching to her hip for her lasso, and then slinging the magical rope at Naruto, who was caught off guard as it wrapped around his neck, choking him. She jerked it and he came flying at her, where she reared her hand back and unleashed a devastating punch at him. It was the kind of blow that should have sent him flying through a building or two upon connecting. Instead, he burst into smoke and sawdust, his body replaced by a splintered log. As she landed, Diana flipped her sword into a reverse grip and stabbed backwards while ducking low. It was just in the nick of time as two more kunai passed through where her jugular had been. Meanwhile, her blade sank deep into Naruto's belly where he had materialized behind her. Looking back at the blonde ninja as he coughed up blood from the fatal wound, he smiled in a sickening way and said, "Well done." Then the clone exploded in a puff of smoke that quickly faded away, along with all the blood covering his and Diana's bodies. Diana sighed wearily at the result of the fight, recalling how this had all started. She had come across a trio of clones while making her way towards the group of heroes the Naruto clone she had conversed with earlier in the evening had mentioned. The trio were in the midst of protecting a small family from some parademons that had snuck into the city through the sewers, and they were being overwhelmed. While the clones were far more skillful, the invaders had the numbers, and the three clones found themselves unable to fight back and effectively protect the family at the same. That is until Diana dropped in from the sky like an avenging angel and made short work of the parademons. And that's when she came to several realizations. These new clones knew that Diana existed and was an ally, but little else about her purpose. Something that didn't initially make sense since they were the same person as the clone she had initially talked to. That is, until one of the clones revealed that Naruto's clones were not psychically linked to each other like a hive mind, though upon their deaths or dispersal, they did transfer their memories and knowledge to all the remaining clones and the original. The Naruto clone she had first talked to simply had not died or dispersed yet, meaning that none of the other clones knew the details of why she was here or what she had been told to do by the clone she interacted with. So Diana had been forced to take a minute to reiterate her purpose and the information to one of the clones, who made an additional clone before dispelling it and relaying the message to the original. The clone had also filled her in on the fact that every time they made a clone it halved their energy. This explained why they hadn't summoned more clones to themselves when faced with the parademons. Then there were the parademons themselves. She hadn't recognized what they were at first. Her mother Queen Hippolyta had made sure to keep Diana out of the archives regarding Apocalypse and its evil ruler. But as she and the Naruto clones were slaughtering the group of parademons emerging from the sewers, one of them hand-yelled. For Darkseid. Those two words had clarified everything for her. Apocalypse and the new gods were not a topic that Diana was very familiar with, her education focusing on the gods of Earth, particularly her patrons the Olympians. But she was familiar enough with the name Darkseid to know who he was. Every Amazon knew that name. They had standing orders to kill him if possible. Queen Hippolyta had done her best to keep her child ignorant of the dangers of Apocalypse, to preserve Diana's childhood. However, Diana had still managed to hear snippets over the years about past conflicts with the agents of Darkseid. It surprised her to learn that at one time Amazons were being specifically trained to kill him, not that any had succeeded. And now, the world was being invaded by the parademon armies of Apocalypse, beings that she had only previously heard of in stories told by the older Amazons. She also knew that they were an enemy that could not be negotiated with, and that Darkseid would desire nothing less than the destruction of this world. Shaking her head to clear them of such thoughts, Diana had no intention of letting that happen. Of course it all hinged on the cooperation of Naruto Uzumaki's clones, who had insisted on them sparring so that they could see her skills in person before they would allow her to join the others, this being the last of nearly a dozen such little spars. Each clone death prompting more clones to show up and continue testing her, some stronger than others, all of them extremely dangerous cause they did not hold back. He had even encouraged her to fight him like she meant to kill him, and so she did. Diana had only agreed to that particular request because they were clones and their deaths were meaningless. Was all this necessary, Naruto? My fighting skills would have been put to better use fighting the parademons than a mere spar. Diana asked, unable to keep her displeasure from her tone, despite the fact that she had enjoyed the fight immensely. The two had become quite familiar with each other over the series of spars and referred to each other by their actual names rather than superhero names. I apologize for the frustration this has caused Diana, but trust me, it was necessary. Naruto apologized, giving her a grave look to indicate how serious he was. The truth is our little team is too new for its members to trust each other wholeheartedly. And barring some kind of calamity it will take time for us to build that trust. That said, the original Naruto, Flash, Superman, Green Lantern and Batman have been fighting side by side for a few hours now and they at least trust each other enough to work towards a common goal without the fear of being stabbed in the back. More specifically being stabbed in the back by me, they will not afford you that same trust easily. Especially since you are not yet a very active vigilante, even though you have been dubbed Wonder Woman in the news. Why not? Diana asked, calming down as Naruto continued to explain his reasoning. It did kind of make sense. With the whole world under attack, it definitely wasn't the easiest time to just trust a stranger. Still, you had to take something on faith when so many lives hung in the balance. Cause you are like me, a warrior first, before a hero. You are powerful and you are willing to kill to protect what you cherish, something that Batman will immediately recognize and the rest will not appreciate. They on the other hand, are heroes who believe in systems and in bringing justice through the law. Unfortunately this is a war with an enemy from beyond this world, their systems and justice don't cover this. They need people like you and me to win this war and they know it, but that doesn't mean they like it. Everything is changing too quickly for their taste and they haven't had time to adapt, thus it will take time before they will be willing to really trust us and until such a time they will treat you, myself and anyone new with suspicion and reluctant cooperation. All of that is time wasted that nobody really has with the whole world currently being invaded. Naruto finished explaining. That's foolishness. Diana blurted out, she found the whole thing both understandable and completely ridiculous. Caution was warranted, but billions of lives were at stake, so there was no room for petty mistrust. Then again, the others didn't know what kind of threat Darkseid was. Naruto merely nodded in agreement as he responded. I know, which is why I figured that this method would be easier. They trust me enough cause I've proven myself and continually improving myself to them. Add to that the fact that I have personally tested your skills and that we are both familiar with each other's fighting style due to our earlier spar, it will be easier for them to accept you if I say you are with me. I can vouch for your skill and work with you for easier during deployment under Batman's leadership without the awkward deliberations of whether or not you are a trustworthy individual. Diana nodded her head in acceptance of his reasoning but still asked with a bit of challenge in her voice. And what about you? Are you claiming that you're not suspicious of my intentions even if you've never met me before? Not that I don't appreciate your pragmatism and kindness so far. Naruto merely chuckled at her words before replying. I can sense good in you, just like I can sense evil and cruelty from the parademons, oh, and I mean that quite literally. I don't know your exact intentions, but I do know you want to help. With the current state of the world, I believe that's enough to give you the benefit of the doubt. Besides, the others aren't bad people, they've just never had to use their powers in war and trust strangers they've never met to protect their backs. The way he said it, with his soft charisma and the aura of gentle kindness surrounding him, there was no question in Diana's mind that he was being completely honest with her. In fact, Diana surprised herself when before she could even think of what she was saying, she said. You're a good man, Naruto Uzumaki. Thanks, but that's something you should really be telling the original. Every clone is just a portion of his self made manifest, some of us have more of his better parts, others have less. But he is the only one who is real and thus worth being judged. The clone replied in an amused tone before continuing with. Anyway, you beat my clone brethren fair and square, so the original will probably signal for us soon to come over. Until then, let's get to higher ground, you will be able to observe him and the team better from there. It's also a good opportunity to familiarize yourself with how they all operate, for when you have to work with anyone other than me. Oh, and one more thing. Yes, what is it? She asked curiously. The clone held out his hand, a golden flame of chakra manifested in it as he handed it to Diana, who looked at it warily. Smirking at this, he said. Take it, it won't bite. It's just a bit of my power, for all the energy you spent up while fighting me in our sparring session earlier. It will revitalize you and maybe even give you a slight boost. Warily taking his hand, Diana felt the flame engulf her and then rush into her. Something within her seemed to at first reject the flame and try to push it out, but after a moment it did a 180 and accepted it. A connection of some kind was made within her, and then everything seemed to turn white as the world seemed to fade away from her mind. The invasion happening around the world, her worries about never seeing Themyscira again, her concern about her friends Barbara and Minerva, Steve Trevor and Ada Candy. All of it was just gone, and all that was left was power. Raw, untamed and utterly euphoric power. It's amazing. She gasped, feeling more complete than she ever had, more powerful than she ever was. Diana briefly recalled what it was like before her gods had visited her in her jail cell and gifted her with her divine abilities, such as super strength, super speed, durability, accelerated healing, longevity and more. But what she felt now was beyond even that, it was as if something that was already in her for some reason had merely been unlocked by Naruto's golden flames. Opening her eyes, her already enhanced senses courtesy of Artemis seemed even better than usual. She felt tough, stronger, more full of energy, and like she could do things that she previously couldn't. Something that was confirmed when small sparks of electricity seemed to crawl all over her skin, like she had been touched by Zeus himself. Diana, what's happening? Naruto asked, sounding alarmed. Her gaze turned Naruto, who took a step back. She ignored this, more surprised that not only could she see the familiar bond in impressive detail, but actually feel him right next to her, like her, she had had some other extra sense activated. Remembering his question, she asked. What do you mean? Your eyes are glowing with electricity. Naruto responded, still looking warily at her before adding in concern. Are you okay? She smiled back at him beatifically as she replied. I feel perfect. This is your doing. Naruto shook his head as he said. I merely gave you a bit of power to help you recover. This, however, is all you. It's as if he trailed off quickly, getting lost in thought. Diana didn't like that. Naruto seemed to have answers, so she insisted. As if what? Naruto shrugged before saying. Last time my powers activated like this, it was negatively and to protect me, I think. He didn't sound too sure about that. Now though, I can tell that whatever my powers just did, it was trying to help you. There is something in you, Diana, something divine. Diana was surprised that this man could not only sense but identify that the nature of her powers were divine. Perhaps he is connected to the divine world in some way. He is quite powerful after all. She thought to herself before deciding to tell him a bit about herself. The Olympian gods are the ones that gave me my powers. Naruto seemed more shocked by her answer than anything that had happened to him in the time they had spent together and blurted out. Wait, they're real? I thought they were just a bunch of stories for children and historians when I read up on them in the library. The book certainly made it seem so. Diana smiled at the fact that even this blonde warrior with so many different abilities could be completely caught off guard by something, before replying. They've been gone from the world for some time now, but they are very real. They are the source of my power. She didn't elaborate on that. Well then, that explains a lot, but we can talk about this when the world's not in danger, let's get going. He said before crouching and jumping to the roof of a nearby building and then to a taller building further away. Diana mimicked his actions with ease and quickly followed, still marveling at this new power she had unlocked with his help. She would need to figure out how it worked soon. Glenmorgan Square, New Troy, Metropolis. Two pencil-thin beams of solar energy lanced through the air and rapidly severed the limbs and heads of several of the invaders, freeing up some space for Sage, who had been surrounded by hundreds of the monsters to fight freely. In gratitude, the blonde ninja threw a hail of kunai covered in lightning chakra at a dozen monsters, trying to surround Superman in the air and overwhelm him. The ninja weapons cleanly punching through dozens of the invaders, armor and all, as if they weren't even there. Superman grimaced at the lethal attack but said nothing. There was no time for words between the heroes, so Naruto nodded in acknowledgement of the assist, but Superman ignored him and flew to a higher altitude of 400 meters, attracting numerous monsters towards him, leaving Naruto with even more room to maneuver on the ground. Sighing at the dismissal, Naruto focused on his job. The team of heroes had all been assigned their objective by Batman. Naruto and Superman were tasked with being the bait, while the rest of the team were parts of trap Batman had set to deal with an overwhelming force of the invaders that had either broken through Naruto's clone perimeter or snuck into the city via other means. Re-engaging the nearest monsters in combat, Naruto swiftly ducked under a clawed swing that would have sheared through steel before driving his knee into his attacker's chest. It staggered back a step, enough distance for him to jump and unleash a devastating spinning hook kick, ripping its head clean off and sending it flying. The ninja was far from done, however. His feet barely touched the ground before he was tackled to the floor by the next monster. It died a second later as Naruto rolled with the tackle till he was on top of the monster and then brought his fist down in devastating punch to its jaw, snapping its neck and pulping most of its face. Rolling to his feet, Naruto threw himself into a butterfly twist to avoid a conflagration from over a dozen monsters that incinerated his last victim. Wiping his hands around, he created a shockwave that instantly put the flames out before grabbing a monster trying sneak up and punch him from behind by the arm and flipped it over his shoulder. The asphalt cracked beneath the creature's weight, but Naruto had more to do. Grabbing its leg, he swung the creature around in low circle, enough to knock over 3 of the dozen of its kin that had tried to incinerate him. He then flung it at the 8 who came charging in behind, bowling them all over. A mass of blue chakra bloomed in his palm as a Rasengan formed, which he simply dropped in the general direction of the 12 monsters and then turned his back to them. It instantly destabilized and then detonated violently enough that the sheer force of the explosion all but liquefied their bodies. Grimacing at the foul smell and the thousands more monsters that still needed killing, Naruto felt a sigh of relief as the Flash suddenly zipped into existence, golden lightning trailing behind him. In an instant, over 1,000 of the invading monsters suddenly found small-shaped bricks attached to their bodies. And before they could even comprehend what the heck was going on, Batman, who was on the roof of a nearby 5-story building, raised his right hand with a detonator in it and pressed down on a big red button. Fire and thunder bloomed across the street-turned battlefield as limbs, organs and other body parts rained down around Naruto and the Flash, who actively dodged it all. Then, without so much as another word, Batman jumped off the building, spreading his cloak that took the shape of bat wings as he glided back to the command outpost he had created earlier. An advanced computer system lay there that had been delivered by the Flash from Gotham. From it, Batman was monitoring the war all across the world. With his job on the ground complete, Naruto brought his attention to the air, awaiting the next phase of the plan. Batman had tasked him with keeping the ground forces busy long enough for Flash to put shaped explosive charges on all of the monsters. Flash and a clone of Naruto had raided every army base within 1,000 miles for the explosive clay that was ironically named C4 and reminded Naruto of Madara. Then they had raided electrical stores for some plastic chips they called receivers or something along those lines. With a little instruction from Batman, the Flash had then mass-produced the small bombs with his super speed. Meanwhile, Naruto had a few clones raiding every single pizza store and fast food joint in town to provide the Flash with a steady intake of calories while he worked. It was a bizarre request in Naruto's opinion, but if it kept the speedster working, then who was he to judge? There was after all much work for Flash to do. From there, it was just a matter of finding large pockets of the monsters that were either still lurking within the city limits due to staying hidden or had somehow gotten past his clone perimeter. After luring them into an area with the challenge of a good fight, they could then be easily tagged by Flash and taken out en masse with a simple button press. The whole operation was even made simpler by the fact that the invading monsters actively chose to fight the strongest or most dangerous individual. So by a not entirely unanimous decision, Naruto and Superman were chosen to be the bait to lure them in. Then once the small army of invaders was dealt with, they merely had to rinse and repeat. It was a simple but very efficient plan that Batman had come up with and had worked 4 times so far without fail. However, everything that had happened so far once only half the plan. Now it was time for Naruto to move on to phase 2 of the strategy, the part which dealt with the invader. Above them, the skyline turned green as Green Lantern descended from the clouds where he had been hiding. Superman had all but gathered every single one of the monsters still flying to himself as they tried to overpower him with numbers or at least hold him in place, a futile effort. A giant fishbowl bloomed around the Man of Steel and all the monsters fighting him in the air, funneling them all into one area with only one exit, which the monsters were too distracted to use. Sage. Superman, now. Batman ordered over the comm device he had handed Naruto as the god-slaying ninja moved to complete the objective. Another Rasengan bloomed in his hand, this one golden. Naruto quickly added wind chakra to the destructive technique his father had invented, giving it its trademark shrill bell-like ring as the Rasengan morphed into a Rasen Shuriken and then into a big bull Rasen Shuriken. It was music to his ears and a death sentence to nearly anything organic that got caught in the technique's path. It was also the technique that had earned him some silent condemnation from both Flash and Superman. None of the other heroes had been prepared for the destructive nature of the technique the first time they saw him use it. However, Superman and Flash in particular had been horrified beyond belief upon seeing the devastating effect of the technique had on another living being, thanks to their unique abilities. It just so happened that they couldn't really complain due to the lives at stake and the fact that it was also the perfect technique for wiping out large groups of the monsters. That didn't stop them from giving him the cold shoulder and treating him with suspicion. Superman, upon hearing the sound, knew it was time to get out of there, just as he had done the last 4 times they did this. With a medium exertion of his incredible strength, the alien hero scattered the monsters trying to latch onto his body, then he sped out of the mouth of the fishbowl. Green Lantern's construct instantly morphed into a full sphere with only a small opening, just big enough for Naruto's technique. Seeing this, Naruto flicked his wrist and sent the ultimate wind release technique on its merry way, right through that opening, which promptly disappeared afterwards. The whole giant construct morphing into a perfect sphere, trapping thousands of the monsters inside for what few seconds they had left to live. Green Lantern had assured Naruto that the force fields he created were all but indestructible. Naruto didn't believe that for a second. However, the last couple of times they had tried this, they had found out that those force fields would hold out against at least this level of destruction, more than enough time to keep the technique contained. The Rasen Shuriken tore right through the monsters like tissue paper till it got right into the center of them. A place where hundreds of them were located, then it expanded. A torrent of trillions upon trillions of microscopic golden razor-sharp wind blades, capable of cutting things at the cellular level, tore through every single one of the monsters present, reducing them to microscopic particles in mere seconds. By the time the technique had run its course, there wasn't even blood left. Green Lantern released a force field seconds after the technique ended, with a sigh of relief and a slightly exhausted hunch in his shoulders before looking at Naruto and saying, "And you said you invented that? Why would you need to create such a monstrously powerful attack?" "I needed to permanently kill an immortal zombie's bounty hunter that refused to stay dead and stole living people's still beating hearts." Naruto shrugged, ignoring Green Lantern's incredulous look at his reply, but said no more on the issue. There was no need to give out any more details on the technique, like how he could up its power to basically nuke mountain ranges out of existence if he so wished. No need to alienate himself further from the heroes than he had already done. They wanted him to reveal more of himself, and he had when he explained a few of the lighter details of the Rasen Shuriken, as well as naming himself as its inventor. But it left both Superman and Flash almost immediately wary of him when he used it the first time. Batman and Green Lantern now both shared this wariness, but were more practical enough not to let it hinder their teamwork and interactions, since they were in the middle of a war. It seemed that explaining that the Rasen Shuriken was created to kill an immortal zombie bounty hunter mollified both Green Lantern and Batman, who was listening in from his post, a little. Even if technically he hadn't created the Rasen Shuriken specifically for Kakuzu, but rather to get stronger, the immortal had still been the first target and the Rasen Shuriken had been needed for that mission. Before Green Lantern could further question on him on what he had just said, Batman announced over comms. "Sage, Flash, Lantern, Superman, regroup with me. I have an update on the current situation that you need to hear." Naruto sighed as he and the others moved to hear what the leader of their ragtag group had to say. At least they had defeated all the monsters currently in the city. Not that doing so would change much if things continued the way they were. Thankfully, according to Clone that had just dispelled Diana was ready to step in and reinforce them. "Focus on the mission, Arth, your majesty." Mara corrected herself with a cold, almost dead tone as she berated King Orin for getting distracted in the midst of their brief skirmish with the otherworldly demons invading the Seven Seas through portals. In response to this, Arthur Curry guided dozens of great white sharks to tear the demons apart with his telepathy. Likewise, with a thought, Mara froze whatever demons survived in spheres of solid water, so highly pressurized the sphere might as well have been solid steel. Clenching her fists, the water imploded, painting it green with the inhuman blood of the demons. "Don't be like that, Mara. I am still just Arthur to you." the king of Atlantis said softly, in a tone that could even be called affectionate and had no place on the battlefield. In contrast to his soft words, the king of Atlantis reared his hand back and threw his seven-pointed trident like a javelin at another demon, skewering its place. The burst of speed allowed him to swim over to the impaled demon in seconds, where he grabbed his trident and swiftly used it to bludgeon two more demons to death that were attempting to catch him in a pincer maneuver. Finishing them off, he then turned back to Mera with that same gentle look that had once been reserved for only her and said, I know I hurt you, Mera. I swear to Poseidon, I didn't mean for this to happen. It was not supposed to be this way, but me and Hela, I don't know how, but we just bonded. His words were dripping with honest, there was no point in trying to deny anything to Mera anyway. She had been the one to find the two of them together, mere weeks from the wedding. After meeting him, Mera had fallen head over heels for Arthur and gotten to know him better than anyone else. The two had shared countless treasured moments together in which he had given her that same look, that same smile. She knew all of his expression and could read his emotions like a book, then less than a week ago, he had left her brokenhearted with his actions. Now the Zabelian princess could never look at that gentle smile again the same way. Things could never go back to how they used to be, between them, not after such a betrayal. Now, his words did not soothe her emotions, instead they made her see red, and she found herself using an almost godly amount of self-control to simply take out her frustration and anger on the invading demons. You once were Arthur, my beloved fiancé, but now you are just King Orin of Atlantis to me. I will obey your will, my king, and protect the interests of Atlantis, as is my duty. However, we are not friends, your majesty, and you are certainly not my fiancé anymore, a decision that was entirely your choice. She said coldly, her tone tinged with bitterness and perhaps a touch of cruelty, judging by the way Arthur flinched at her words. A part of her regretted it almost as soon as she said it, but she would not take back her words, and he deserved it for his betrayal. Turning her back to him and thanking the ocean for hiding away the tears she felt like shedding, Mera added. Now, I have invading demons to kill and vent my anger on, so it would be very nice if you would just drop this matter and get moving to the next point of interest, the place the surface dwellers call Metropolis. You can make your pathetic apologies for sleeping with my sister after we clear the oceans of these foul invaders. But that she sped away, subconsciously using her hydrokinesis to part the water around her and increase her swimming speed. Even so, King Orin quickly caught up to her, he was simply a more powerful swimmer. He looked sad and ashamed of himself, thankfully remaining silent as they continued their journey. Good, he should be ashamed. We were to be husband and wife in a month, and he breaks his vows with my own sister. If not for the damage such a scandal would create for an alliance between Zebel and Atlantis, I would have shamed them both before the open courts of Atlantis. Now the best I can do is get as far away from them as possible. She thought bitterly. As he waited for everyone to join him, Bruce Wayne went over everything he had learned of Naruto Uzumaki Aka Sage. It wasn't a very long list seeing as he'd only even become aware of the young man today, but it was alarming. The fact that he was a ninja, that alone made him dangerous and made Bruce Wayne wonder if he had connections to the League of Shadows or some other equally dangerous organization. If so, he would need to investigate them and their motives, as well as create countermeasures against them. He also needed to know if there were other ninjas in this possible organization as powerful or even more so than Naruto. The blonde had proven capable of super hearing, super speed, super strength, incredible durability, flight, the creation of sentient copies of himself with all his abilities and skill sets. The ability to project concentrated balls of rapidly revolving energy that exploded violently and much more. Sage, himself, had even admitted that he had many more abilities he was keeping secret cause he didn't trust them enough to reveal those abilities. And then there was this latest idea one of his clones had come up with independently of the original. Quite frankly, the ninja was terrifying to Batman, maybe even more so than Superman. At least with Clark Kent he knew what he was dealing with, he knew enough about the alien's life to know that he had been raised well and with good morals by his adoptive parents. So even if the Man of Steel was stronger than the planet and capable of wiping out the entire human race, he would never do so willingly. Bruce's countermeasures merely had to take into consideration the unlikely scenarios in which a third party took control of Superman through mental domination or some other kind of manipulation. A far less challenging problem than dealing with Sage, Batman could not confidently say that Naruto had such strong morals or would be so easy to contain due to his numerous abilities. With his team gathered, a team which Naruto had helped thrust him into the position of leader and representative to the rest of the world, Batman said. Good job on taking out the monsters that got through Naruto's clone perimeter around the city. With some satellite imagery and computer data, I've beepized the situation and come up with an assessment. The plan we created earlier this evening is working, but so far we are merely holding the line, and in one city at that. It's better than nothing, Batman. Green Lantern spoke up. This city alone has a population of 11 million, and at most the monsters have only been able to abduct a few hundred. The rest of the world is not that lucky. Nodding his head, Bruce replied to Hal Jordan's comment with, "Indeed, and that's exactly the problem. These monsters roam free across the rest of the world, and while Sage has spread out his clones across the world to halt the invaders, they are a mere stopgap measure, and one that will not last forever. Even here where he has the most clones, they were briefly overrun by a massive wave of the monsters. It's simply further proof that our strategy isn't viable in the long run. These monsters continue to pour through their portals, and their numbers continually rise, soon even Naruto will grow exhausted. Quite frankly, we need something to turn the tide around and give us a chance of winning, or at the very least stop us from losing before it's too late." "Any ideas on what could do that?" Flash asked. "Sage's power isn't limitless, only Superman seems to hold that honor, but it is very versatile power regardless." One of his clones made an interesting suggestion. The clone suggested that instead of digging in and fighting a pointless battle to keep these monsters out of the city while waiting for military reinforcement, we can instead move the people somewhere safer and more defensible so that the military can easily take over. The invaders have clearly shown that they are specifically targeting civilians for capture, likely in order to harvest us for some unknown purpose. In that case, it's more logical to move everyone to a more defensible position to save zones in the control of the various militaries around the world. They won't protest at the chance to better protect their own citizens," Batman explained. "It sounds good and all, but how the hell are we supposed to move them? None of us can carry enough people fast enough to make a dent in the population of a large city before the monsters arrive. Better yet, how will we convince the different governments around the world that we are here to help, let alone that we can actually succeed at something like this? Unless something's changed in the last half an hour, superpowered folk like us are still being blamed for this whole mess to begin with." Green Lantern said in an extremely skeptical tone, not having much faith in the plan at all. Batman merely smirked and replied, "Leave that to me." "Leave that to you, buddy, your guy dressed up as a giant bat." Ignoring the serious creep factor there, what government would deign to give you the time of the day, especially when you don't even have any powers? Hal yelled in disbelief. Humoring the Lantern, Bruce replied, "They will not have choice in the matter. Not after I finish hacking into every military and civilian satellites around the world, and certainly not after I send messages on every television, radio and online RSS feed in every language native to the region, telling people what to do and how they can get to safety. I've already figured out where to send everyone. I'll be telling their governments as a formality, and so that their soldiers don't start shooting civilians when they suddenly pop out of thin air." Pinching the bridge of his nose in exasperation, Hal Jordan, much to Bruce's amusement, muttered, "Why did I even ask? Okay, I kind of get that you have a plan to enlist the cooperation of the different governments around the world, but that doesn't explain how you plan for us to move everyone. I may be fast, but I can only carry a few people at a time. And running back and forth between cities all over the world and their designated safe zone would tire even me out quickly." Flash aired his concerns. "That would be my job, Flash," Naruto said with deep sigh, looking a little hesitant. It was obvious to Bruce that Sage was less than pleased that a clone had gone behind his back and revealed something that Naruto wasn't quite ready to reveal to them. This knowledge was both interesting and valuable to the Gothamite. When the clone had come to Bruce with his solution, well, Batman hadn't known what to think really, aside from giving Naruto a higher threat rating than he had initially done. It was something that was so far outside of his area of experience that it seemed like a joke to him, but Naruto Uzumaki was being entirely truthful. This was the real deal, a solution to their problem that was both convenient and easily implement, well, easy for Naruto to implement, or so he implied. With the lives of billions on the line, Bruce accepted it and was unwilling to second guess it, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. A sense that things wouldn't continue to go as easily as they had so far. Whether Naruto was the cause of these feelings or something else remained to be seen, but Bruce intended to keep a closer eye on the ninja. For now, he watched as Naruto and the others interacted. "What do you mean by that? You are already fighting these monsters with your clones, won't it put a strain on you to try and deal with transporting civilians as well?" Superman asked. The godlike alien was, despite his mistrust of Naruto, willing to work with him for the greater good. Good, he needed them to work together. It was one thing to be suspicious of newcomers and unknowns, it was another thing entirely to turn down a helping hand when lives depended on it. Batman was glad that Clark wasn't that foolish. "I can create markers which I can teleport people to," Sage announced in a resigned tone. Everyone but Batman immediately turning to him to stare in shock. Naruto, however, ignored this and continued, saying, "Don't look at me like that. I already told you I have other powers and more secrets that you will have to earn before I trust you with them." This is just one of those secret abilities I have, it's not something I can use carelessly either, at least not on this scale. There were grumbled from Flash and Green Lantern before Superman asked. So you plan to basically shuffle around 7 billion people? Naruto snorted in amusement at the ridiculousness of that idea before replying. I'm good, but not that good. If all goes well, it will be hundreds of millions at the most, and mostly in major cities which are the invaders' priority targets at the moment. Still, I need to find these people first, which is where Flash comes in. Me? Flash asked in surprise, looking to Batman for confirmation. With a nod of his head, Bruce said. Yes. Your job is to find every last man, woman and child so that Sage's clones can teleport them. The way he explained it was that he needs to either be in physical contact or his energy must be in contact with whomever he's teleporting, and he can only send them to his markers. Which I believe your clones have finished distributing at the locations I gave. Sage frowned and gained a far-off look, as if his mind was elsewhere before replying. Yes. All 10,000 of me are ready. His indication of the true number of clones he had created shocked everyone present and increased Batman's wariness of him a tad bit more, but it also reassured the Dark Knight that perhaps the world had a chance of being saved by the team. Yes, Sage definitely needed a higher threat rating. Bruce Wayne concluded before saying. Well, you know your jobs, let's get to work. Tokyo, Japan. Tsukushima Yukio held her 6-year-old son Harada tightly as the winged demons from Sky surrounded them. The two of them had been caught out in the open as she was walking him to the neighborhood school when the monsters descended. She had spent the last hour running and hiding while the police and the JSDF tried desperately to fend off the invaders. Without anywhere else to run and completely worn out from her desperate efforts to protect her child, she was convinced that this was the end for her, convinced that her desperate cry to Amaterasu and the other kami for salvation would go unanswered. Closing her eyes as the three of the winged demons descended on her and her child, like they had for so many other innocent people, she prepared for the worst. Luckily the worst didn't come. There was a loud bang like a gunshot had gone off, followed by series of loud and meaty impact sounds, and then distant crashes. Bringing herself to open her eyes, Yukio was surprised to find a foreigner standing in front of her. He was young, early 20s and incredibly handsome, with spiky blonde hair that had splotch of white just above his forehead, sapphire blue eyes, and a trio of whisker-like marks on each cheek. He was just standing there with a kind smile, waiting patiently for her to address him. With what little English she could remember she asked. Who are you? It was butchered and came out sounding more like who are you? But the foreigner seemed to understand seeing as he replied in perfect Japanese. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, I'm here to help. You speak Japanese? Yukio asked, startled by his name and perfect accent. To her surprise he shook his head negatively and replied. Your language is as foreign to me as any other, but so far every language on earth I have come across, whether spoken or written, I have simply understood. The how or why I understand languages is unimportant, I just do. You are speaking Japanese, but to me it sounds like elemental, and I am speaking elemental, but it sounds like Japanese to you. That is all there is to it. Are you a god? She asked while beeping her head sideways in clear curiosity. Surely there was no language on earth called elemental, and the ability he had described did sound like something one would expect of a god. I am similar but different. More importantly, I am willing to step in and save you from these invading devils on their behalf. That is if you and your son are willing to take my hand and trust me. The foreigner replied, offering his open hands to them to grab on. Hands that were glowing with golden flames. Giving one last glance to her son, Yukio decided to take a leap of faith and closed her eyes while reaching for the foreigner's hand. She was surprised when instead being burnt by the golden flames, she felt herself be enveloped in what she could only describe as power. She felt more alive in that instant than she had ever felt in her entire life, and all the aches and pains in her back from an old car accident were instantly gone. Opening her eyes, Yukio was surprised to find herself wrapped in a field of dark orange energy shaped like a fox. Besides her son was also wrapped in the same field of energy, having accepted the god's hand, while she was caught up in the euphoric feel of power coursing through her body. This man had not deigned to give out his name, but he had to be a Nari or a follower of the fox god. The golden flame, the fox-shaped energy and those whisker marks couldn't possibly be a coincidence, right? Getting her wits about her, she asked. So what happens now? Now, I send you somewhere safe, where other clones of me will give you further instruction. He said. With a foxy grin that made her blush before she and her son were enveloped in golden light and instantly transported elsewhere. Delinkirchen, Germany. NATO personnel backed by the full might of the German military were running back and forth trying to organize the hundreds of people appearing from thin air every seconds by the seconds. Already a substantial population well into the hundreds of thousands were in makeshift tents provided for them by the German military. All of them had been plucked from Berlin and nearby towns before being quite literally teleported to a field right next to the NATO airbase. The German military had surrounded them with entire convoys of tanks, IFVs and APC, while fleets of gunships, combat drones and other military planes circled the sky above to shoot down anything that wasn't human. The whole country was at red alert, every country was at red alert. The whole world was currently under attack, and the only ones who really seemed to know what was going on were those vigilantes from America, particularly the Batman who had somehow called the German chancellor on his personal phone with a solution. A solution that involved the relocation of a massive amount of citizens from the capital to safe zones, via teleportation of all things. To say that this left General Wolfgang von Leonhardt at a loss of what to even think was an understatement. No one really knew what to think of the alien invaders or of the vigilantes who were pulling what could only be described as acts of God, particularly that blonde one with the spiky hair that was running around the camp helping set things up. But one thing was plain to see, these vigilantes know, these heroes were here to help, and as long as they were protecting German citizens, the German chancellor was happy to let them, which in turn meant the general was happy to let them. Taking a deep draw on his cup of 1859 malt whiskey, a gift from one of his fellow generals when he got his first star a few years ago, General Leonhardt polished off the remnants of his drink and headed out into the field. He had work to do and his country's citizens needed protecting. Unknown location, Washington, D.C. I don't understand. Which one is this guy again? The president asked as he studied the footage of the man with spiky blonde hair, decked out in black ordinary clothing, instead of a skin-tight supersuit. The blonde was in the midst of slaughtering over 3 dozen of the invading monsters with just his bare hands to protect a group of school kids downtown. Monsters that had armor tough enough to ignore small arms fire from cops and the strength to rip through steel girders and reinforced concrete like tissue paper. The blonde was making the task look easy too. Besides the president, the head of his Secret Service detail, an agent named Robbie Lucas replied. He's an unknown, sir. But Batman is using him or his copies to move hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of civilians to his proposed safe zones. That man, sir, is everywhere. I sense you don't like him, Robbie, even though he is out there saving American lives. The president asked with a raised eyebrow, knowing exactly what Robbie was thinking. The agent having joined the now president's detail years ago when he first became a senator. No, I don't, sir. And not just him, all of their kind. How am I supposed to do my job and protect you and your family in a world where people can fly and rip monsters to pieces with their bare hands? This guy can somehow create copies of himself, and right now many of those copies are scattered all over the world, executing Batman's orders. Not yours, Batman's. The same Batman who just hacked the world, and more importantly America's civilian and military network, 'cause he could. Robbie finished, his explanation turning it into a slight rant, which was a tad bit biased, but the president didn't mind. He had specifically asked for this. I see you feel quite strongly about this. The president said with a thoughtful expression of his own. It was an understatement, they had this conversation every other day, though Robbie had never expressed himself as much on the matter as he had today. Yes, Julian, I do. Robbie said in a friendlier tone, using the president's given name, a right Robbie had earned long ago, after taking a bullet for him back when he was just a senator. My life's mission is to ensure you get a chance to fulfill your life's mission. But I can't fight what I can't see coming, I can't kill someone endangering you who just so happens to be invulnerable, and I can't stop a person that can simply teleport you away in an instant. A little dramatic there, but okay. And speaking of teleportation, I want to hear your opinion on Batman's plan. He went to dangerous lengths to get our attention. The US president asked. Near as we can tell, it's exactly what Batman said it would be in his transmission. The relocation of people around the world to his proposed safe zones where they can be protected by their native countries, militaries, Mr. President. He also forwarded a list of observations he had made and strategies that had worked for him and his team. Robbie said, a little sourness in his tone. Julian's lead agent, no doubt secretly wished he could empty a clip in Batman's face for the headache the vigilante and his kind had created for the Secret Service. Now the US would need to create brand new countermeasures to deal with the superpowered individuals threatening the past, present and future leaders of the nation and their families. I see, and this young man is the key to Batman's whole strategy, right? The president stated more than asked, his eyes refocusing on the screen with the young and unmasked vigilante. A plan already going through his mind on how to spin this into a political win for his re-election. That footage would leak in the aftermath of this crisis once they repelled the invaders, and these vigilantes would no doubt be seen as heroes. As President of the United States and leader of the free world, he would need to get ahead of this quickly. Sensing a change the president's disposition, Agent Robbie Lucas asked. Do your orders still stand to have Batman arrested for simultaneously hacking our satellites, sir? The president shook his head in response and thought to himself. Robbie and many others will not like this. In a tone that made it clear that it was an order, the president finally said. I'll rescind that order. Mr. President? Robbie asked, addressing him formally to show his old friend that he would respect and follow any orders given to the letter, but as a friend and trusted confidant wanted an explanation. Sighing deeply, the president said. Ensuring that whatever kind of technology Batman used to hack the world doesn't fall into our enemies' hands is imperative. But this new guy is transporting the populations of entire cities through space and time to Batman's safe zones. Someone that powerful is following Batman, alongside the Superman, the Flash, and who knows how many more of these super beings Batman has with him. If they pull this off, if we somehow repel this invasion, then they will be seen by the whole world as heroes, and I will not be seen as the American president who persecuted its own heroes. Besides, we can always bring Batman in later, when the whole world isn't watching, and he doesn't have as much public support. Mollified with the explanation, Robbie replied. Yes sir, Mr. President. There was a trio of loud knocks followed by 5 more in an alternating rhythm before the president got up from his workstation and said. Well then, Agent Lucas. It's time to meet our new hero and get my family and our entourage extracted to Cheyenne, Colorado via teleportation. NORAD has intel for me to make a decision on. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Robbie growled before rising to meet the teleporting blonde Batman had sent for the president and his family. Had it been up to Robbie Lucas and the United States Secret Service, this meeting would never have happened, but it wasn't. The White House was surrounded by the invaders, and there was no other quick way to extract the president and his family. It was President Julian Anderson who made the decision to take up Batman's offer of extraction, so the Secret Service just had to grit their teeth and bear with it. The corona of brilliant energy surrounded Naruto Uzumaki in the form of golden flame, while he hovered above the ground, legs crossed in the lotus position. He had been channeling power for mere minutes, but across the world the reports were the same. Millions of people were being teleported by his clones to Batman's designated safe zones with each second. Most of the major cities on the planet were being emptied of their entire human population at a mind-boggling speed, and it was putting a clearly tremendous strain on Naruto. His nose had been the first to start bleeding from the strain, as he pushed every ounce of chakra he could into his connection with his clones, something he had learned to do during the war. It was swiftly followed by his ears and eyes, as every vein in his body seemed to bulge in grotesque fashion, yet he did not break his concentration for even a second. Then he coughed up a mouthful of blood, but instead of quitting like the other heroes insisted after taking notice, he gave one last push with everything he had, before his chakra aura flickered out and he fell to the floor. Hitting the ground on his hands and knees, gasping hard for breath before hacking out some more blood. Sweat dripped from his forehead in fast-flowing trickles, while his whole body shook with exhaustion. The blood that had been leaking from his nose, eyes, mouth and ears quickly began steaming before evaporating seconds later. His body was automatically pushing everything he had left into healing himself of the physical damages he had caused to it. Naruto had always had good regeneration due to his Uzumaki heritage and Kurama's chakra, but Tsunade had helped push his regeneration to new heights during the 6 months of the Fourth Shinobi World War. Teaching him how to direct that regeneration with slight amounts of chakra to speed up or prioritize specific areas, or even how to slow it down in case he needed to for some reason. She'd also taught him the basics of medical ninjutsu, nothing complex, but enough to diagnose a patient with his chakra, as well as knowledge about human anatomy. His 6 paths healing ability, filling in the rest of the gaps. The sheer amount of knowledge and training he had received from Tsunade, significantly speeding up and heightening his regeneration to a point that it was easily comparable to that of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. Making him in turn extremely difficult to kill. Even so, the strain of channeling enough sage chakra to power over 10,000 clones across world and then have them transfer over 400 million people to the safe zones. To say it was a tremendous burden was an understatement. The task had come closer than anything since his battle with Kaguya to killing him, leaving Naruto almost perilously low on chakra. And the damage wasn't just to his physical body either. His chakra reserves felt as if they were near empty at this point, but that wasn't a problem. They would refill to safe levels in few minutes. It was his chakra pathways that worried him. Quite frankly, they felt like they had been deep fried and knocked out of commission from the sheer amount of energy he had been channeling and the speed at which he had been using it. All but the smallest trickle of chakra through his pathways hurt. Right now he couldn't perform another jutsu if his life depended on it, and his pathways would need time to heal, possibly up to between 30 to 45 minutes. Time in which he could not replenish his clones or teleport anyone in danger to safety. And as if that wasn't bad enough, at the moment, Naruto felt as weak as ramen noodles both physically and mentally. If he tried to fight a parademon, then he would definitely lose in his current state. Thankfully his clones were still around and he was in safe company. A hand appeared before his face, and Naruto looked up to see who was offering to find Superman, much to his surprise. When he wasn't acting as bait for one of Batman's plans, the Man of Steel's job had been protecting the Metropolis Safe Zone, a football stadium and its surrounding facilities, in the New Troy district. It was packed to the brim with people, 11 million people to be exact. It had taken the combined efforts of the Flash and hundreds of Naruto's clones to get food, water, medication and any other supplies that were deemed necessary to just about everyone in the safe zone. But even with sealing scrolls making the job considerably easier, moving the supplies and gathering all those people to the safe zone had been hard work. Grabbing the offered hand, Naruto was pulled to his feet, which he stood on shakily at first before getting his balance under control. A bottle of water was handed to him by Green Lantern which he gulped down almost desperately, followed by a towel to wipe away the sweat by Flash. The kindness his new teammates were showing him surprised him a bit. It was a 180-degree turn from the wariness and sometimes blatant mistrust he had been shown earlier that evening when he first used the Rasen Shuriken. "Thank you," Naruto humbly said, but Superman shook his head as if to say his thanks were unnecessary. "We've been unfair to you, Sage, well me and Flash that is. You didn't identify yourself as superhero but rather warrior, so we've all been keeping you at arm's length in our own ways. And then there was that Rasen Shuriken technique you used. Well, for someone like me who can see all those energy blades at the microscopic level," Superman explained. Flash immediately picked up where Superman ended. "And someone like me who watched it all unfold, slowly. It's a horrifically terrifying application of your power, and so we judged you without even really considering that you might have had a good reason for creating something like that. I looked at you with the same suspicions as I would a potential villain." Lowering his head slightly, Superman said. "What we are trying to say is that, we are sorry. Watching you struggle to channel all that power, desperately working to save as many people as you can. It drove home the fact that you are just as much a hero as any of us, perhaps even more, and we had no right to judge you, especially when we don't know anything about you. Please forgive us, Age." "There is nothing to forgive, guys. I don't think that you were wrong to be wary of me, in fact due to how I grew up it's expected, comforting even, in its familiarity. I am Ninja, I was raised in a world of violence, where you did not trust anyone save those from your own village, that's what I was taught from an early age. I wasn't ever very good at that though," Naruto said with self-depreciating chuckle, before turning to them and saying. "I never needed you to like me or fully trust me, only to trust me enough to be able to do my part and watch your backs, just as I trust you to watch mine. And you've already done this for me, it's more than enough." "It's not right. Green Lantern is my friend, but I only met Superman and Batman tonight. I was willing to trust and cooperate with them as soon as I met them, but as soon as I saw the effects of your Rasen Shuriken. I treated you as if you were not one of us, just someone we needed in the meantime. I treated you like something to be used and discarded. You're a part of this team and it's not right." Flash insisted. "Sighing," Naruto said with a chuckle. "The irony of this situation is that is exactly how a ninja is supposed to be treated. But then again, that was the old way of doing things, and we've outlived those archaic ways." Looking up to Flash and Superman he said. "You two really are one of a kind, your consciences won't even let you fight a war without settling your inner feelings. Fine, I forgive you, but really it's unnecessary. It would be a different story if you were completely unwilling to cooperate with me and people died cause of it, but not once did you object to my ideas or refuse to back me up. For me such actions showed me enough about you guys, for me to want to work with you, to even proud of it." Superman held out his hand to shake it as he said. "Thank you, Sage. This fight isn't over, but I can definitely say that it's been an honor working with you so far." Taking the hand and shaking first Superman's hand and then the Flash, Naruto replied. "Agreed. Geez, you guys. Let's save the congratulating each other for after we win." Green Lantern interjected, having remained uncharacteristically silent for the last few minutes. Batman, who was naturally a silent type, added. "Lantern's right. We are a long way from being done here. The safe zones are keeping millions safer than the cities could, but my satellites are picking up a large number of the monsters headed our way." "Yeah, about that. I got us some backup." Naruto grinned while scratching the back of his head. Narrowing his eyes, Batman asked. "What do you mean backup?" "I made a friend while we were busy taking out the parademons earlier," Naruto explained, hoping they would ignore the fact that he was only just bringing this up now. He didn't really want to explain, let alone justify his clones being able to act independently from him, or that only after they dispelled did he absorb their returning memories and knowledge. Otherwise, he had no clue what some of his clones were doing. "Parademons?" Superman asked, sounding fascinated with the word. Naruto pointed at few dead parademons that had been stacked on the side of the road by a couple of clones and said. "Apparently that's the name my friend uses to refer to these invaders. This isn't the first time they've attacked the planet Earth either." "And how do you know this is accurate or that this friend of yours is telling the truth?" Batman asked. It was less from caution and skepticism than a desire to have all the relevant information so he could make new plans for the future involving Diana. He was really good at planning like that. "Simple enough, one of my powers allows me to sense good and evil in a living being, to a certain degree. Trust me, she is not evil or I wouldn't bring her up." Naruto chuckled at their incredulous looks as he revealed another power before saying, "Look, I know it's a lot to take on Faith, but she is a good person. Like us, she just wants to help humanity, and she's a damn good fighter, something we will need cause I won't be able to perform ninja techniques for a bit, I'm still healing internally. She was capable of defeating one of my clones in one-on-one combat 12 times in a row, a clone that was not holding back at all. We need her." Batman eyed him for a moment, clearly deliberating his next move before he asked, "Do you trust her?" Naruto didn't hesitate to nod before replying, "About as much as I trust you guys. So yes." "Then call her, I presume you have some prearranged signal." Batman stated more than asked, ignoring Green Lantern's protest in the background about him not getting a chance to give an opinion on the matter. "Yes, though one more thing. Me and her are already pretty familiar with each other's fighting styles, so it's probably better she fights alongside me when you deploy us, Batman. Also, she is very much a warrior, so please try to keep that in mind as you address her and make her feel welcome." Naruto replied before giving a shrill whistle signaling for Diana to come out from the shadows. A moment later there was crash from the impact of something landing on the ground hard enough to crater it. As the dust cleared, Princess Diana of Themyscira rose from it in all her beauty and grace. She had been watching them from a skyscraper 2 miles away, like Naruto's clone had instructed before it dispelled itself, and was clearly delighted to finally take part in the action. "Welcome to our little group, Diana." Naruto greeted Diana as she walked up to him. The others all had their eyes on the new girl and were clearly wondering how well he knew her. Even in his current weakened state, Naruto could still sense a bit of lust and jealousy radiating from some of them through his empathy, mostly Green Lantern and surprisingly Superman. Smirking, Naruto introduced her saying, "Guys, allow me to introduce you to Diana of Themyscira, Princess of the Amazons, and the most skilled fighter I've yet come across on Earth. She is a fierce warrior willing to aid us in protecting the innocent and saving the world." "The princess? Here?" Green Lantern asked, shocked by this fact. "Don't just assume that she's like one of those useless Disney princesses in the media. Trust me when I tell you that she is good as me at fighting, and we've all seen what I can do," Naruto said with a frown. Well, it was true that most princesses didn't fight, even in the elemental nations. The stereotype that princesses and royalty were weak because they were royalty and lived a soft life did not really exist in the elemental nations. Over there, a princess not fighting was simply by choice, rather than because they were incapable doing so due to their lifestyle. It made Naruto wonder what the hell kind of princesses Earth had for a story like the Princess and the Pea to pop up her Sleeping Beauty. Not to mention he had literally just told Green Lantern a minute ago that she was a warrior and that they should make her feel welcome, going as far as to stress the warrior bit. The temptation to punch the green buffoon was suddenly very great. "Even so, if something happens to her, her home nation will hold us responsible," Flash interjected. "You don't have to worry about Themyscira. We are Amazons, war is in our blood. Should I fall in battle, I will be honored by my sisters and you will not be held responsible," Diana simply offered. "Okay. Now that we got that cleared up, Diana, perhaps you can tell them what you told my clone," Naruto said, forcing a change in the topic so as to rush things along before he punched one of his teammates. "I don't know as much about them as I would like. My mother, Queen Hippolyta, tried to shelter me from such dark knowledge for most of my life. However, what I do know is that these invaders have been to this world before, thousands of years ago at the dawn of human civilization," Diana explained. "Naruto mentioned a little about that, but I'd like to hear the details from you," Batman said, very focused on Diana now. "These parademons are merely mindless soldiers that follow the will of their god and ruler, and make no mistake about this, their ruler is a real god. He is known as Darkseid, the god of evil, the tyrannical ruler of Apocalypse, a world that sits beyond the boundaries of the universe itself, also home to the new gods. They are a species of deities that differ from the gods of Earth in some way currently unknown to me. Most of what I know about the new gods and Darkseid is merely knowledge passed down from the older Amazons, who personally fought as agents thousands of years ago. I didn't yet exist back then," she confessed, looking a little ashamed that she knew so little. Naruto gave her an encouraging smile that made her smile back at him. However, her words caused no small amount of shock for some of the heroes, especially when they realized the meaning behind them. Flash was the first to deduce what she had said and asked, "Wait, are you saying that your people live for thousands of years?" Diana merely nodded as if it was no big deal as she replied, "I myself have lived for over 1,000 of your years, according to your calendar. Yet, I am a mere child in comparison to Mother and the other Amazons. I don't know how long they have lived, but they have been around long enough to remember what Darkseid did to this world the last time he graced it with his presence. What did he do? Superman asked warily. Diana frowned as she continued her story, saying, "You have to understand something first. Back then, all mankind had for weapons were spears and arrows. Useless against a normal god, even less than useless against a god using divine technology, beyond the understanding of mortals. In short, humanity had no chance of winning that war. But seeing as we are still here, then the war must have been won, right?" Green Lantern asked, to which Diana once again nodded. The gods of Earth rose up in the end to defend the planet alongside their creations. The gods and their creations, the monsters from myth and mankind, all fought with one unified goal: to protect the Earth. They barely held the line against Darkseid and his invasion force. From how my mother told it, the one time she was willing to indulge my curiosity, these parademons are but a fraction of the armies Apocalypse fielded back then. Diana said, looking around at the destruction and damage caused by the parademons to Metropolis, and no doubt aware that the rest of the world had suffered similar damage. Apocalypse is also home to one full half of the race of new gods, the other half residing on a rival planet called New Genesis, who are basically the good new gods in opposition to Darkseid's evil new gods. It was these new gods who actually drove Darkseid and his armies back to Apocalypse. He couldn't fight a war on two fronts. Batman accurately concluded. Exactly. We had enough gods and monsters to keep his forces in check, but only barely, and the cost of doing so was immense for Earth. Many gods died that day, and while gods can reform after dying a physical death, it takes time that can be considerably extended when no one is around to worship you anymore. It's said that only a handful of the most famous of gods and their respective pantheons are even remembered in this day and age. As a result, only they have returned from death to walk amongst us once more. I'm sure they are less than pleased to find that they've been reduced to mere myths and folk stories. Diana finished with a snort. Humanity was well known for having a short memory when it came to stuff like that. You speak as if you know the gods, personally I mean. Batman stated his observation. The Greek gods are the protectors of Themyscira, and they are the ones that granted me my powers. Diana said, as if it was just another everyday thing to talk about gods. Floating in space above the Earth, hidden from the eyes of all beings in this multiverse, a true being that transcended all existence, quietly hovered. This being had its gaze set firmly on the blue marble of a planet that was humanity's home, watching steadily as the armies of Apocalypse invaded Earth and reaped a toll in human life. Yet it was no near as much loss as the being had initially expected, thanks to the efforts on one truly admirable young man. The being would have liked to watch the transpiring events for a little longer, but it seemed everything was coming to head. The climax of this story's arc was just beginning, and despite the being's omniscience, the being had blinded themselves to this timeline's future so as to better enjoy it as it unfolded. With a small but genial smile, the being said, "Looks like it's time for the action to really kick off. It's time for you to prove to me that you were worth the time and investment I put into saving your life. Show me the future I glimpsed when I found your half-dead body floating around the empty abyss, bring it forth so I may be in awe of you mortals once more. Show me what kind of hero you are, Naruto Uzumaki, and in doing so show the whole world what you are worth, my dear little god slayer." Metropolis Harbor, Metropolis. There was a thunderous crack as the very earth shook and the waters raged as if Poseidon himself had decided to unleash his wrath. A pillar of pure energy shot into the sky as the ocean water caught fire in the distance and swirled lazily in a mockery of Naruto's family name. When the energy finally dissipated, it revealed a massive tower rising out of the sea. A single glance at it was enough to tell anyone that the tower was not of human design. In some ways it appeared almost organic, rounded and smoothed. In other ways it had odd angles, was jagged, scaly and twisted. Nevertheless, even from a distance Naruto could feel the tower radiating malice and cruelty through his empathy powers. It was all he could do not to fire a tailed beast ball at the nearest one, and indeed, there was more than one of the damn things. Well, he really couldn't, even if he wanted to, cause his chakra pathways were still messed up, but it was the thought that counts. "What is that?" Flash asked, bewildered by the gigantic tower. He had been the first to get to the docks area with his super speed, followed by Superman, Naruto, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern and then Batman. Instead of answering him, Naruto focused his attention on the water. He'd almost missed it with the sudden appearance of the tower. Two individuals in the water, one nearby another further down, killing parademons if the negative emotions and dark life signs winking out were anything to go by. There was a thud as the body of a parademon landed on the boardwalk in front of them, a 7-pointed trident skewering it like a giant kebab. And crouching behind the monster was a dripping wet blonde man in green and golden scaled armor, with a jeweled necklace around his neck. A man the public had taken to calling Aquaman. "I was hoping you lot could tell me." He spoke in a rich charismatic voice as he yanked his trident out of the back of the parademon before adding. These demons are in the water too. I take that that's your friend in water busy annihilating the other parademons. Naruto asked, nodding his head towards the water to show exactly who he meant, an action that earned him a bit of surprise from Aquaman and frown. Aquaman didn't get the chance to reply though. Not friend, royal subject. A woman said bursting out of the water like a jet seconds later to land on the docks. In a word, she was beautiful. She had rich red hair that somehow managed to look both wet and dry at the same time and would have marked her as an Uzumaki in the elemental nations, blue almost aqua-colored eyes that seemed to glow with hidden emotions, and a heart-shaped face with high cheekbones and light pink-colored lips. She was clothed in a form-hugging full bodysuit made of countless green interlocking scales resembling those of a fish and lined with gold. The outfit had a low V-neck that hinted at an impressive amount of cleavage, yet hugged her curvaceous figure in a way that any man could deeply appreciate. The sleeves of the outfit were missing, showing her muscular arms, save for the jade arm guards covering each of her forearm. Around her waist she wore a belt with numerous little sections, like small pouches, while its buckle was made of gold and in the shape of a letter A. The woman's words seemed to have a negative effect on Aquaman, as Naruto felt his emotions instantly plummet, but the blonde water man quickly rallied himself again and arrogantly asked. Who is in charge of this group? I vote me. Scowling as his fellow blonde, Naruto replied. We already got a leader, and he is currently dressed like a giant black bat. You want to lead, you better prove you are better than him, and more importantly worth following. Naruto finished by thumbing at Batman, who merely frowned but said nothing. The giant Emerald X materialized in the air between the heroes, followed by a loud buzzer sound going off as Green Lantern interjected saying. No. Back up people. I am not about to take orders from just anybody. Who the hell are you two anyway? They call him Aquaman. The lady is an unknown, though she has been seen in his company on occasion. The answer came from Batman, and it startled everyone save Naruto, who was already aware Aquaman's existence thanks Madame Zenatu. Aquaman is real. Green Lantern asked in disbelief, looking like the world no longer made any sense to him. I'm standing right here. Said Atlantian spoke up, fed up of everyone talking about him as if he wasn't present. It didn't help one bit seeing as Green Lantern continued to ignore him and muttered to himself. First Batman is real, now Aquaman is real. Be polite Lantern. Flash said in a low voice after elbowing his friend in the ribs, much to Green Lantern's annoyance. Diana however was delighted by the news, smiling at the newcomers as she joyfully proclaimed. Greetings, Atlantians. Quite a day for a fight is it not? In response, Aquaman frowned at the greeting and asked. How do you even know that I am Atlantian? I am Diana of Themyscira. She promptly replied, making Aquaman's partner smile and step forward to talk to her fellow female. Clearly she was not too interested in talking to the men. An Amazon. Here. I thought your people no longer involved themselves in the affairs of mankind. The woman said, finally interested enough to engage in the conversation. Diana happily replied. I could say the same about your people, but here you are. Nodding in acknowledgement of her point, the Redeed said. Indeed, Diana of Themyscira. However, I am not of Atlantis, I am Mara of Zebel, another city-state of the old Atlantean Empire and currently a rival kingdom to Atlantis. Technically they rule us, but we are our own thing. Aquaman, who had seemed so confident and arrogant since his arrival, seemed to once again deflate at those words, and Naruto sensed a deep sadness and regret coming from him. But it was only for a moment before he compassed himself and lightly nudged the parademon he had killed with his foot while saying. This demon I killed was in my ocean, it said of a device that tore open a hole in the water and more of its kind flew out. You're obviously gathered together to fight them. I suppose we have. Flash replied after looking around, giving everyone gathered a once-over. Nodding his head, once he confirmed that everyone present was ready to fight, Aquaman said. Then the question is, what do we do next? Any thoughts, oh noble leader? Naruto teasingly offered Batman. He had been quiet for a lot of the conversation, much like Superman and Batman, and now felt the need to speak up. Those towers appeared for a reason, and the parademons are circling them as if assembling. Let's find out their purpose. We need to get inside one and figure out what they are for, how they work, why they are here and how to break them. Turning to Naruto, Batman asked him. Do you think your clones can blow them up with your Rasen Shuriken attack if worst comes to worst? You said they can do the same things you can do, so even if you are still healing, they should be fine, right? Yeah, my can blow it up, not sure if a Rasen Shuriken will cut it though, that tower is huge. Don't worry, I got something more explosive in mind for the job, just leave it to me, them. Naruto quickly corrected himself with a small smile. He was going to say more but was suddenly interrupted by a now familiar and rather unwelcome sound. The Naruto and everyone startled as a new portal opened right in front of them, and from it appeared a young black man in his late teens or early 20s covered in silver white armor. Correction, it looked like the armor was grafted to his very body. It didn't look like the process was pleasant either. Naruto cursed himself for not being able to seal the portal due to his chakra pathways being messed. And again, it proved to be unnecessary when he looked at the new guy's emotions. The young man stumbled to his knees as the portal closed behind him, and then all hell broke loose. Diana drew her sword, Mara created a vicious-looking spear of solid water to skewer him with, and Aquaman aimed his trident at the newcomer. In the same amount of time Green Lantern created a giant hand which moved to clamp around the young man and more than likely crush him, while Superman, Flash and even Batman subtly prepared for combat. Naruto had no intention of let that happen however. In a burst of speed that left little more than an afterimage, Naruto moved forward to intercept Green Lantern's attack. And with a single punch, Green Lantern's giant hand construct shattered it into thousands of emerald pieces that quickly faded into nothing. Naruto felt rather impressed by his body's physical capabilities, despite not being able to use his chakra. Startled by this, Green Lantern yelled. "Hey, what the big idea? I had this one." "Use your eyes you fool. He is not a paradaman, he's just a scared kid." Naruto responded, making everyone take a second look at the young man. The fact that he had arrived via the same portal as the paradamans had put everyone on edge, that he mostly did not look human, had not helped. However, Naruto could sense his emotions and knew that neither he nor his armor were seeped in the same evil taint as the paradamans. This guy was obviously something else, and the others must have recognized this too, seeing as one by one they all started to put away their weapons. "Sage, how can you be sure he is not an agent of the enemy?" "Being thorough as always," Batman asked him. It surprised Naruto to find through his empathy powers that Batman was completely trusting him with this decision. "As you remember, I reacted negatively to the paradamans when they first appeared. That's because I can feel their darkness. To me their hate, cruelty and evil are something almost tangible, something almost infectious, so my powers activated automatically to shield me. This guy has none of that, he is just a kid that's scared out of his mind, with regular human emotions, but still trying to do the right thing. Also, if he is here then he like all of us came here for a reason." Naruto assured Batman and felt relieved when Batman accepted his word. "You don't think it's coincidence that he's here?" It was a statement from Batman rather than a question, and it was true. Them all gathering here wasn't an accident, but destiny or some other higher power. He would know, he wasn't from this dimension after all, and had been a child of prophecy in his native dimension, where he completed said prophecy and brought peace to the world at the cost of everything he cared for. He should have died but was brought here to another world in a time of crisis, desperately needing heroes to save it, and had leaped right into the fray without a second thought. There was no way it was a coincidence that he of all people was here, let alone with the 6 most popular vigilantes in all of America, and 2 new guys. 9 of the world's most powerful beings in one place. No matter how you looked at it, this couldn't be coincidence. Naruto smiled as he responded. "I don't think it's a coincidence any of us are here, and neither do you, Batman. That said, it would be nice to know your name, my armored friend." Offering a hand to the metal-clad man who reminded him of the puppets of Sun Agakure except metal, the man hesitated for a half a second before allowing himself to be pulled to his feet as he said. "I'm Victor Stone and I've talked to their technology. I know their plan." Naruto smirked and yelled. "See, I told you it wasn't coincidence." "Not now, Sage." Batman chastised before focusing on Victor and saying. "Mr. Stone, we need that intel. Billions of lives might be depending on it." "Yes, of course, Batman, sir." Victor stumbled nervously before clearing his throat and saying. "They go from world to world, harvesting the population." As he said this, a holographic image was projected from a red eye-like visor in the middle of his forehead. It depicted swarms of paradamans attacking other worlds and carrying off their residents. "For what purpose?" Batman asked. Victor paused mid-sentence as he received a new signal. His holo projection shorted out of existence a second later, and there was an extremely loud ping from every Mothra box in the city at the same time. As all of the giant towers spiked in their energy output, and Victor looked at the one out in the sea with horrified expression as he said. "Oh no, it's too soon. We are too late." "He's here." "Who's here?" Superman asked with a great deal of concern in his voice, to which Victor Stone merely pointed towards tower in the middle of the sea, making the group as one turn to it. But it was Naruto who gave them all their answer as a massive portal tore open the sky and tens of thousands more paradamans flew out, along with a humanoid figure that looked very different from the paradamans and was clearly their leader. "What we've all been dreading since this battle began," Naruto said in a tone that was unnaturally calm and did not at all match the icy feeling of dread he felt inside. "So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.